call to order the Historic District and Historical Commission meeting for Wednesday, September 19th, 2018 at 6 p.m. here at 732 Main Street in Harwich in the Griffin Room at Town Hall. We will begin with a call to order. A roll call, please.
Julie Aldridge.
Into the microphone, please.
Julie Aldridge.
Bob Doan.
Bob Bradley.
Gail Carroll.
And as required by law, the town is,
G.
and we just did a roll call, so we will,
Apologize.
could you just,
Jean Steiner.
thank you. So, as required by state law, the town is notifying all of those in the audience that we may audio and video record this meeting. If anyone in the audience is intending to either audio or video record the meeting, we ask that you inform the chair at this time. Seeing none, we will start by reopening the public hearing for HH 2018-09. It is a certificate of appropriateness which was received for 711 Main Street, map 41, parcel D8 in the C-V zone in the Harwich Center Historic District. The application proposes to demolish the circa 1970 gasoline station shed and construct a two-story mixed-use commercial structure that includes 2 dwelling units. The application is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40C, Section 6, and the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Ellie Basil, trustees et al. Owner is Samuel Patel. Before we get started,
Yes. I'm going to recuse myself.
so Mr. Bradley is an abutter, direct abutter, so he is recusing himself from this side of the table for the rest of the hearing. To just bring everyone in the audience and everyone on at this side of the table up to speed, this is a continuance of an earlier public hearing. When last we spoke, we had postponed so that we could see the remaining elevations on the property and take a vote on what was presented before us. It looks like what we had in our packet is an updated plan that shows the parking lot. It looks like we have the proposed front and side elevations that we had seen at the last meeting but had not had a copy of, and then it looks like we have proposed right and rear elevations. So, if you can state your name.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the record, my name is Howard Cahoon. I'm an attorney for the petitioner this evening, the Patels. With me is the principal from the Patels, Mr. Samil Patel. And you're correct in your description. What you have tonight is what we'd like to get approved if we could, so that we could get into the business of building this structure. I think it's pleasing. I think it's going to be an asset to the town and to the town center. And we're here to answer questions if you have any.
Okay,
You
so,
wanna- Oh, go ahead.
sorry, if we can just go through the plans just so that we can all acquaint ourselves with them. The proposed left side elevation and the proposed Main Street elevation. I think the Main Street elevation is on the bottom, or the second page. We can start with that. If anybody has any questions or comments on this plan, I believe this is the plan that we had seen the last time. It may have been updated, I'm not sure.
We've sort of fine-tuned some of the columns and so forth, maybe a little of the detail, but yes, that's pretty much what you saw before.
Okay.
Was it the 3 windows or was it the 2? Did you change the window configuration?
Not on the front, no.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board on these 2 elevations?
Yeah, could you again walk through the left side elevation in perspective of where the cars would come in? I think there's parking on that side, is that correct?
That's correct. There will be cars directly in front of that side of the building, but not on the rear side, not in the rear.
And the main entrance,
The main entrance remains on the front,
right?
so that we can hopefully encourage people walking along the street. But the side entrance is up toward the front, in the front part of the building,
Okay,
up toward the road.
correct.
So correct me if I'm wrong, to the, if I'm looking at the proposed left side elevation, Main Street is to the right.
Correct.
And are all the windows on the second floor part of the apartments? Or is there any fake windows?
Our architect couldn't be here this evening, he's got another commitment, but I think they're part of the apartments. There are no fake windows.
Mary, I have a question.
Yes, please.
The space on the part that faces Main Street, the space in the front, under the roof, that is like a small porch? Is that correct, or is it?
No, there's a portico over the entranceway coming out from
Okay,
the roof, but it's not a porch. Do you mean on the second floor porch or deck or something like
no, I'm
that?
talking about the first floor. It looks the way the roof is drawn on the bottom of this proposed Main Street elevation. It looks like it comes over something.
Well,
And I thought maybe there's like a porch there.
if you look at the side view and look at how it comes out from the building,
If you
Right.
look at the right elevations on the left and the proposed rear elevation, Jean, I think you can see how it overhangs.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I meant. There's an
Yeah.
overhang.
oh, just a
right?
little
overhang.
overhang,
Yeah, okay. And then, so there would be something there for people to walk on or whatever,
Yes.
right?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
That's what I meant by a porch, I'm sorry. Probably not good terminology.
Now, it looks like you have colors proposed, which I don't know that we saw colors before. Looks like you're proposing the Oxford gray architectural
Yes.
for the roof shingles, and it looks like white. Am I missing something on colors? What's the trim color around the windows?
I'm not sure it says.
Okay.
Ooh,
Whoops. I'll get paper towels.
can we have a short recess?
Yeah. We'll just take a minute.
We're off the record.
Thank you all.
Started out as a good day. Thank you. Yes, that's true. It didn't hit the microphone. That's good.
Madam
No
Chairman,
computers.
Yes,
I think that we gave you a color,
so we had this from the last time.
Right.
Those are the colors that we're still,
right.
we're
It's the
still
dark
working on.
one. Yeah, I see it circled, is that the?
And they're pretty much delineated also.
That's what I was looking for.
Are there any other questions from members of the board on kind of this initial left end Main Street elevation plan. There's a cupola referenced.
Again, I think the color of the trim is not indicated here.
Okay,
I mean, do you have,
White,
I never
white.
saw one. Was it white?
Well,
Oh.
we expect it to be white. You mean the trim around the windows?
Yeah.
Yeah, white.
Now, will the trim on the windows themselves, because what is the composition of the windows?
You're right, it doesn't say.
You know, is it wood, is it metal?
Oh, it's absolutely wood.
Right.
It's absolutely wood.
It says wood casing.
The proposed
Yeah.
4-inch wood window casing.
So they would be painted white also?
I think so, yes.
I think we have to be very definite.
All right, they would be. Do you want them to be white?
Well, I don't, no, you,
No, white
I
would
don't
go-
tell you what to do,
No,
but.
no, but I'd like your preference.
just the difference when we're in a certificate of appropriateness, we,
We need to be
we,
precise.
we need to get, we expect to have colors and
Right.
things of that sort, so.
So they'll be white.
So you're looking at white and that UFO gray color in the middle of the,
Correct. Right?
any other questions on this sheet? Julie?
No.
Now, this isn't showing any lighting detail on this one. I think originally you did have lighting detail.
We have lighting detail on the,
Yeah, they did.
lighting on on this.
So no lighting on the building?
No.
these are lampposts.
So there's no, because the original plan did have lighting
It did.
Are you sure?
on the building.
It had lights over each of the windows. I don't know where they came from. The,
Yeah, but I feel like we didn't have the overhang in that design.
Mhm.
So when we added the overhang, the lighting is not shown. There will be lighting underneath. Yeah.
you could put lighting on the overhang, couldn't you?
Problem.
Like that recessed lighting or something.
Like the overhang. Underneath the overhang,
These.
we will have it.
Oh, right, you drive it in.
Mhm.
Anything over here?
Doesn't look like it.
They'd have to have security like.
Did before, but now we can have like recessed light underneath the overhang.
See, they don't
The-
have
the- I think
access.
the lighting would
If
be
I-
recessed underneath the overhang.
So that was my question. If it looks like the 5-foot roof overhang, so what you're saying is they're gonna be underneath,
Yes.
Yeah,
as opposed to before where you had proposed a flat front
yeah.
Correct.
with a higher,
Yes,
higher peak,
peak, right.
or soffit, I guess, the right word. Okay,
You don't, on the lighting, you don't have pictures of the fixtures?
Not for those, no.
but you're saying they're recessed,
Yes.
so they're gonna be hidden,
Right. Well, I was even asking for the parking,
the parking lot.
Yeah.
Well, the
They-
the
they're
parking lot describes them.
here, but
Oh, LED green lifestyle series, decorative area, light pole,
Greenleaf Lifestyle.
graphite, okay. Or per town of Harwich Historical Commission.
That-
Gray is fine.
Unfortunately, I don't know what it looks like in that description.
Right. Any pictures of them?
I think it's similar to what's next door, but I don't have any pictures, no.
Any more questions on the front two? Do you want to move on to the rear and right side elevations?
Mary, one question.
Yes.
On the front elevation, is the only signage going to be the sign that's standing? Okay, so there's not going to be anything on the building itself? Great.
I would just point out that when you're ready to put the sign up, at that point, you'd need to come back for the sign permit, because we just don't have the details on the sign
Right.
to approve that as part of this. Any questions on the right and rear elevations? These are new to us tonight.
Are the side doors, I see a side door on both the right side elevation and then the rear, are those
Those are mostly egress doors to the
for
apartment.
the apartments? That's
Yeah.
what I thought, okay.
And what, will they, you be using those doors to go in and out? I would
Yes.
assume so. Now, this one, these do show lights over
Yes.
the doors.
I see that. Right away?
Any questions from the board on these elevations? Jean?
No, I'm good.
Gail? No. All right. Let's look at the parking lot plan. So I will just say, as Bob Dome pointed out, I personally would like to see what those light poles are gonna look like and see samples.
Mhm.
And I think the same is true for the lighting on the rear elevation. It is viewable from Parallel Street, so
I don't think it is, but we'll get to
the
the
rear of the
details.
building.
I've driven down Parallel Street. There's a lot of fences, a lot of foliage and trees, and it's at a lower level than the top, but we'll get you the details anyway.
Okay,
I don't think it's.
But
really-
on the side, that's
Yes,
definitely be seen.
absolutely.
yeah.
As well as, I'd like to see the lighting fixtures under the
On the
recessed ones
overhang.
underneath, yeah, to see what they look like. Because those probably will be visible from the street at some point, depending on how deep the overhang is.
Now, how about the parking lot? Any questions about the lot? When we spoke at our last meeting, one of the things that I didn't see in our packet that we had requested, you need to go before planning board for approval. So one of the things that I think we had talked about was having, knowing what waivers you were actually going to be seeking from planning board when it comes to planning board approval, so that we were at least aware of what those were, so that if there was anything that that we were in support of, we could,
Well, we talked about the setback from the road. I think we're
yeah.
be encroaching on that, and we'll need a variance from that. I think it's 20, 25 feet from the road, and we're going to be much closer to being in line with the neighboring buildings.
And what about parking?
I think the parking is pretty good. I think it complies.
Okay.
Now, did you move your handicap parking from the side to the back? I think the original plan was that the handicap would be I should say, the side here.
On the side. Does the other plan show that it was?
I don't think I've got the other
Is that
plan.
right? Did you move it?
Yeah, it used to be, but it's like difficult to enter.
I guess you're right, Bob, it was changed, and the reason being that there'll be more mobility, more room back here and ramp and so forth, whereas up front in the, near the first block, first, it's a problem. That's correct, it's been moved.
Does that need to go before, is there an access board?
There is, but I think, I don't know if it has to go before the access board, it definitely has to go before planning, anyway.
Okay, would they pick
Because
up
of
on
the
that when
parking.
that's, okay.
Town planner will check out all of that. Any other questions from the board? On this?
Not a question, I just like the amount of greenery that is shown here. I think that's going to be very,
Greenery.
the greenery, I
Good.
think, is going to be very nice.
Thank you.
Gail,
Well,
Bob, anything else?
that is a good question. Is the greenery grass?
The greenery green.
Yeah, exactly.
There's going to be certainly some bushes, you can see those. I'm not sure that we've come up with a total plan,
Yeah.
but it's going to
is-
be an area that's going to be unto itself and a buffer of sorts.
But is it going to be mulched, or is it going to be grass? I mean, that is kind of critical.
Mhm.
We need to have a plan for that, exact landscaping plan.
Okay.
You know,
Mulch,
Mul-
mulch,
trouble with mulch is it gets to look pretty bad very quickly. It has to be constantly maintained,
change,
even
has
as,
to be changed, yeah.
and it traps litter and things like that.
Mhm.
Anything else from the board?
I'm good.
Okay, we are still in a public hearing, so are there any questions or comments from people in the public today? Please. Please step forward and state your name for the record.
My name is Helen Doan. I live at 653 Main Street, have lived there for 35 years, and in Harwich Center about 10 years before. I have not seen the site plan or the building, so I can't really comment on that. But I got here after the Exchange Hall had been ripped down. And I know you will carefully consider Harwich Center, historic Harwich Center, that this building and this use is going to be here for several lifetimes. So it needs to fit in the Harwich Center mode. Anything is better than what's there now. I agree with that. But I'm pretty sure, I know I don't want another convenience store. Or what happens to the old one, I don't know, but, excuse me. And I certainly don't want a bigger convenience store. I walk all the time. I walk past that store. There's a lot of litter. There are a lot of scratch tickets. The trash is almost always overflowing. The building itself is not well kept. And if we have even more square footage put to the similar use of alcohol, scratch tickets. When we walk, we often take a plastic bag and pick up nips all the way along, and soda cans, and scratch tickets. And when we get to the store, there are even more of them. So just, I know you will consider carefully, and I hope you do. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public?
Greg Winston. I really want to point out one of the things that I think is most important, and Helen's absolutely correct. We've had traditionally a problem with the trash, and I'll be very honest with you. I live at 109 Parallel Street, but we also own the real estate at 118, 114, and I don't know what else on Parallel Street. And it's very convenient for contractors or workers or people to patronize the store and quickly grab their scratch tickets and their nips and run. I literally picked up 4 Jim Beam bottles off my lawn just an hour before I got here. That's an issue, and that bothers me. But I think what bothers me more than anything, and I think what's under the jurisdiction of the Historic District Commission, is the streetscape. And I'm very concerned about the streetscape. We, the audience, has not been able to see the changes that have been made to your graphics or your architectural plans. As a life member of the town of Harwich, I'm concerned about the village, as are so many of my friends, including Helen. And I'm really, really very concerned about the streetscape. I understand the topography of the land. I know how it drops off. And I know that it's difficult without filling to get access from the back into the store. And I'm thinking that the parking, I would like to have a chance to relook. And I also understand that this is a preliminary hearing in as much as it has not been to the planning board yet. Am I correct?
So Greg, this is our third public hearing with them. It's the third continuance.
So this is the first hearing for historic. The second hearing for historic.
No, third hearing for historic.
Okay.
They've been before us 2 other times.
I want to go back and address the streetscape.
Plus-
That's my
plus today,
primary
and
concern now.
And that's fine. They came before us preliminarily, and then they have had, so this is actually their 4th time before us that they've been agended. So we have discussed extensively the streetscape. The plans are available. The plans are here if you'd like to come up and look at one of our copies.
Okay.
You certainly can do that.
The parking plan has not changed, is that correct?
We have a set of plans in front of us, and the parking plan has changed from the beginning. I don't know that it's changed significantly
I'm
from the
sorry,
last.
I wasn't able to
Yeah,
access the.
Understood. So this, I wouldn't say this is a preliminary meeting with us. We're deep into their review of their certificate of appropriateness.
Okay.
They do also have to go to planning board, because it will require a special permit before planning board. So they have come to us first to get our review and approval, and then my understanding from council was that they were then going to apply to planning board.
Okay. Understood.
For the planning board stuff.
And I have no more comments to make relative to color, size, and so forth and so on. Further information, obviously planning. But I will say, I support business. I support business in Harwich. I support business in Harwich Center. I would do anything to see Harwich Center become the vibrant little community that it used to be when I was young. And I also want to warn everyone carefully that as we go along and approve, we need to understand that, yes, anything's better than what's there now, but let's please make sure it's appropriate. And I want to add one more thing. It's been a problem for me for a very long time. The original site plan, and I understand the owners do not own the real estate. I think they don't own the real estate. But the original site plan has been abused. The site plan of the real estate that's now the store has parking, designated parking. But what has happened over time, and my business partner has filed numerous complaints with the planning department, is that the back side, which I guess you would consider the back side, would be the east side of the store, has been used as a parking lot for a very long time, and it is supposed to be green space.
So when you talk east side of the store, east side of the existing
East
store?
side of the existing store. I just
Okay,
want to make
so-
sure that,
So we're next door to this there, so they are, my understanding is the applicant is a tenant in that current building
it's hard,
now, correct?
it's hard to police this after it's happened, so I just bring it up now
Understood.
because I think it's important. It's important because it's a part of the streetscape, but the access road that runs from Parallel Street to Main Street now, which is actually not a town way, but the original site plan that Christie's had when it was Christie's Market, that was green space, and it is no longer green space. It's been used as parking space for a very long time, and it's just a muddy mess. This is all part of what I think the Historic District Commission should be considering, you know, when you're looking at the parking and you're looking at the landscape and you're talking about green versus mulch. Mulch can turn into dirt, which can turn into a parking lot.
Right,
I just wanna bring
I
that-
just don't want to confuse the existing lot
Oh, I
with what
completely
what we're looking at tonight is the lot next door.
I understand that
Right,
completely.
so,
I completely understand.
so
that. No, I
but there
completely
are others,
understand.
there are
I've
others,
seen-
so I just want to make sure that everybody is clear
no,
that
I've seen all the preliminary plans.
we're looking at next door.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and point well taken, for your
The most
edification.
important point
so-
is that there's a very large piece of real estate there, but there's a very serious topographical drop-off, and it makes it a hardship to get into the store without filling that back lot, so they're going to ask you for more parking left and right. And if it's not available on the plan, it could become conveniently available because someone's just going to park there to get in quick and get out. And I just want you to be aware of that.
So Greg, just, you mentioned the streetscape, just so that you understand that when the original set of plans that we saw were a significantly smaller, part of the building on the streetscape. It started out with, I believe, 40 feet, and they've stretched it to 60 feet, to hide some of the parking, at this board's request. So, just so that you're aware, this is the reason we're at meeting number 4. We had a preliminary, and this is the third of the public hearing, so.
And I apologize because I haven't seen the
Understood.
recent plans.
Understood, and I just wanted to put it on the record so that those that are listening may be in the same situation and don't understand that, so I just want to make that clear. Anyone else? Please.
My name is Peter Antonellis, and I'm in a butter on Parallel Street. That would be the south side of the site.
Mhm.
We're directly behind the site that is to be improved with this development.
Could you speak into the microphone, please? Thank you.
So we're directly behind the site that will be developed, and for some 25 years that I've lived there, a little bit longer, that space has been a green space. So when there was talk tonight about green space and what that's going to look like, or greenscape, excuse me, there was some commentary about whether or not, how much of this would be visible from Parallel Street. Well, it really depends on what, in fact, is developed there and whether there's fencing there or shrubs. That's of particular concern to me. It's served as a buffer for all these years, and that's clearly going to be removed. To echo what Mrs. Doan said and what Mr. Winston said, I know Greg was concerned about how much of the lot that's designated as greenscaping is actually going to be turned into parking. Well, that's really of concern to me, because if there's green space there on my border and it turns into parking, that's something very different. I'm a former chairperson of this commission, and I can tell you that there, as you probably know, were criteria developed some time ago about how you would make your decisions and what elements you would be looking at architecturally and spatially and the rest. Mrs. Doan said it when she said, this space is going to be developed. It's going to be there for a long time, and what needs to happen is there needs to be, I believe she was intimating, what needs to happen there is it should be looking as if it's compatible with the area. If it looks like the building that they now occupy in any way, that's not really what we're aiming to do in the historic district, I don't believe. So I'm expecting that it will look compatible. It doesn't have to look like one of the three sisters, but it certainly, whatever's developed there needs to look like the other spaces, the other buildings, the other elements that are already in the district. I'm not telling you something that you don't already know, but I haven't seen the new plans yet. I understand they're available for inspection. But I would hope that the members of the commission, would point out very specifically what it is that drives them towards finding it appropriate or inappropriate. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for comments? Mr. Doan? Mr. Bradley? Mr. Doan sitting next to me. That was a slip of the tongue.
I'm Bob Bradley, and I'm in the butter. We face the site from the other side of the street, Main Street. I'll keep it short. I just thought that I'm quite disappointed. I thought that there would be, in the restudy of the facades and the parking, that there would be more of a consideration as to the existing rhythm of the street and the sensibility towards the scale of the various buildings that still make up the center. I think this building does not do justice to what is in the center right now, and I think it's your prerogative to protect that. I think that this commission is the only commission that can discuss that kind of thing and control the completion of the center. These buildings, these sites were sites that were occupied by residential houses many years ago, and they have lost their relationship to the rest of the town by the current architecture that's sitting on them. This particular building seems to be a rendition of the building next door that they're currently occupying, and I don't think it really has anything to do with the town as we know it. I think it's an intrusive form of architecture. It could be anything from a Howard Johnson's to whatever. I understand that the parking has to have some relationship to the street, but I think it could be still minimized. And I am concerned, Greg brought up the business about the landscaping and the change in levels of the site. And I think it could have been, with some imagination, it could have been used more inventively so that there would be some relationship to the back of the building, to the neighborhood itself, maybe even having entrances on the lower level, which would make the building a three-story building, whatever. But it would still act as a two-story building on the front, and which brings up another thing. It really isn't a two-story building because they're putting dormers on the second floor, which also is something of a problem because I could not read. I'm pretty good at this, and I could not read the apartments into the facades. They seem to me like they were just drawn in for the purposes of presentation right now. But I have a hard time believing that behind those things are apartments because there's no variation in the windows and no expression of exits and no balconies or whatever, which is also sort of sad if they don't have any balconies or whatever to have people use those things during the summer. I did think there would be a more aggressive take on this after the last meeting that I had attended. And so my reaction tonight is one of serious disappointment. The landscaping alone, with the variation on the site, there's about an 8-foot drop in the back there. And as I said, that could be utilized for another level of maybe retail work or whatever. And the more space they have for income, the more they can, it would seem to me, the more they should go for it. I mean, it seems ridiculous not to take advantage of that change. And also, my wife made sure to have me mention the fact that, please, be specific that there'll be no neon signs in the windows. That's a violation, and we have not been able to have the town react to it properly. And I think it's one of the biggest things that happens at night when we're here, I'm here, and my wife is here, but an awful lot of you do not see what goes on at night. And also the floodlights over the parking spaces should not intrude on abutting neighbors, whether they're on Pleasant Street or on Main Street. And they should not shine in the windows of the abutters either. That's two things, flooding and shining. And I would like to have that specifically said in the response that the commission gives, no matter what it is. I would personally ask for more work on this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Madam Chairman, my name is Paul Doan. I'm live at 653 Main Street. I've been a resident of the Harwich Center for 75 years, and I've seen quite a bit of change occur, some of it good and some of it disappointing. We're at a significant disadvantage here because I haven't had the privilege of coming to prior meetings of your committee on this matter. I have talked to the representative about it. I'd be curious if I could ask for someone to present what has changed. Have there been adjustments made to the original plan? Is someone able to summarize what changes architecturally or physically have occurred through these 3 or 4 hearings that you've had?
Sure. Do you feel comfortable as,
All right, I'll take a shot at it.
okay?
And if I might address a couple of other things that Helen and Greg have talked about.
Sure.
First of all, and through you and the board, the existing convenience store will be moved into the new site. The package store with the alcohol will stay in its present site, won't come up top, so to speak.
Okay.
Could you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry.
You can pick it up and hold it if it's more convenient.
The facade has changed dramatically from what I think you were familiar with, it's sort of a full cape rendition with a cupola and an L out the back of the building. And it's much more pleasing, in my opinion, than the original, which had
Design.
which had no real definition and no real thing.
Well, in that regard, if the liquor store stays where it currently is, then this building is just food and beverage, soft drinks and that sort of thing?
You know, there might be a sandwich bar there.
Sandwich, okay.
There might be, there's a convenience store.
And the same owner for
Yes, we will still be tenants at the present site,
okay,
and we will be the owners of the new site.
okay. Well, my only comment, I guess, and I appreciate the fact that maybe changes have been made for the better, which I commend, and I think just having something on that site is a plus, although as the committee's has to know, that's obviously a critical item to Harwich Center. And there's efforts underway as I speak to organize further efforts in this regard, economically, architecturally, economically, whatever can be done to revitalize Harwich Center. I remember one comment from my days years ago, but and it was repeated in a recent publication. Link Thatcher made the comment once that if you can't find something you need in Harwich Center, you don't need it. Harwich Center used to be the core of the town. And gradually, everything was sort of pulled away from it, whether it be the grocery store, the post office, the hardware stores, and so forth. I commend the efforts to try to take advantage of what is certainly an eyesore right now. I don't want to replace it with another eyesore, though. And if this is, in fact, in your view, a step in the right direction, I commend you for that. I would ask the board to consider, because as my wife has already recounted, and I can echo, when I walk up to get the paper, I take a plastic bag with me now and pick up all kinds of refuse, mostly small liquor bottles, tin cans, everything. People get to about my house and they finished whatever they were consuming that they bought at the store, and it goes onto my lawn. But I'll pick up stuff all the way, including into the parking area for the convenience store. I'll pick up scratch tickets, and I don't know how many times I've spoken to somebody inside the door. Can you just go out and empty the wastebasket? It's overflowing out onto the sidewalk. People are throwing stuff. I would like, I don't know, I should know, but I don't know the full extent of your authority. But in making this plan, I would like you to get the owner to commit to some things. Greg mentioned that parking area behind it. It's already been said there's going to be green space behind the building, but I don't know whether that could conceivably become parking. But could you insist on the owner that if this is approved, that there be some sort of regular policing of the area, that garbage pails are emptied, that there's some pride taken in the building? This is going to be a cornerstone for the center. And whatever comes after it is largely governed by this structure, or partially governed by this structure. So I commend them for doing something about that ugly space. I just hope that whatever has been revised here has been revised for the better. And I would like to think that the owner could take some real pride. If he can put real shingles on the roof, spend the extra buck to do that. Send a message to the town. If McDonald's can be asked to go along with the architectural design of a certain community, a Starbucks or whatever, it would seem the same could be done here. And hopefully the owner would have enough pride to maybe do the extra. You're setting the tone for the town with this building. And if you do it well, you're going to encourage more business. If you try to sort of get by with the minimum, I think that sends another message. And if there was any way that the committee could reinforce some of this kind of desirable, but maybe not legally establishable steps, I would ask that that be somehow incorporated into your actions and approvals. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a couple of comments for you and for others, information in the audience. What we have before us is a certificate of appropriateness, and what our purview is as the board, a certificate of appropriateness, because it is in the historic district, this board has a say on the site as it's seen from any public road, any public street. So I think from my perspective, every part of that building, front two sides, and the rear, is somewhat visible from any either parallel street, main street, coming east or west. So that's really where our purview is. As to the actual use of the building, that's governed by the planning board. So that's where they will come in with needing additional permitting. But from our perspective, it's the site as it is, the way it looks in the historic district. So just so that people understand, that's exactly what we're talking about here. I thank you for your comments. Anyone else that would like to be heard?
If I might take a moment.
Certainly.
I don't mean to prolong this. Sometimes you should stop, but I think it's nice that you stood up and made some constructive criticism and comments. I should speak into this.
Please speak into the
I should
microphone.
speak over here. I think it's, my clients are here. You've got their attention. If you had been at the first hearing, I would have pointed out, as I'll point out again, because there's so many more people here. Mr. and Mrs. Patel, Gary and Bella, are sitting here. Their two sons are Samil and Ale. They've been residents of the town of Harwich for 10 years. Samil and Ale graduated from Harwich High School and have graduated from college in Boston. They own Brewster Farms over on Route 6A in Brewster. I think if you had seen that when it was bought, and today they've made it a better place. They've improved upon it. They try to keep it picked up. Your points are well taken. I noticed some of the problems that you point out in Harwich also. I think that the amount of money and pride that's going to go into this building, I think it's going to be a centerpiece for Harwich Center. I think that the Patels will take good pride in maintaining it and putting their best foot forward. So that's all I can say. I think they have a stake in Harwich, and they want to make it better, and they have to live here, and they plan to live here. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else that wishes to be heard? Any additional questions or comments from the board?
At this point, I feel that we're still lacking detail, that typically on these final plans that we actually get cut sheets on the windows, the doors, what they're going to look like, certainly a complete landscaping plan that we need. We need all the light fixtures. One of the things that I know I had mentioned at the last meeting was the sidewalks, of what the material would be, and I even suggested something that might look like bricks. I know that hasn't been addressed. And the other thing I just noticed is that you had different windows prior that I thought looked more interesting on the first plan, and instead of these lights overhead.
You mean the transoms?
Yeah. You had a whole different window before.
Okay, I thought the transoms looked a little nicer, but you like the other ones?
I personally do, but I'm only one of the committee, so. Do you have the old plan?
I think the other one had little windows above each.
Yeah.
Gail's little
Yeah.
one. But it's
Is that,
still-
yeah, you've got it there.
I still Gail's little one.
Yeah. And it had the detail underneath that looked, they
Oh,
look
the-
much
the-
better.
The paneling underneath.
Yeah, and above, too,
I agree,
instead of the transoms.
okay,
They still eventually transoms, I believe,
probably less money, that's fine.
but we need to see what the detail of that is.
And let me I just thought of one other thing, Madam Chairman. The site plan is pretty specific into how many spaces are required and how many spaces are provided, and I think that we've are going to be able to meet the planning board's requirements. And I've noted your light descriptions and so forth, and also the buffer zone, which is in green color. We want to know what that's going to be, and I think the preference would be grass as opposed to mulch, because I've seen that turn into dirt and so forth, and it does create a problem.
And to Mr. Doan's point, the cut sheets on the windows, what the lighting is going to be.
Yep.
The post lights
Yeah.
the post lights and if you're having overhangs or lighting underneath the
recess lighting?
the soffits.
Also, any detail on the columns, because they're just showing boxes now, and that should be broken down, I think, into a little more detail.
wrapped.
Oh, there's some detail there, but
Yeah.
maybe a close-up detail of the columns, because it does look like it does have some detail to it, but I can't really tell from the plan.
Are those items you'd be able to get us by the next meeting?
What's that? Will we be able to?
Which is generally the third Wednesday,
Like October
So-
18th, I think?
the third Wednesday in October. Which
Absolutely,
would be October 17th.
absolutely.
Okay. So if you can get us those items,
Yeah.
preferably a week ahead of time, so that the board will have time to review them before the next meeting. You're agreeable to another continuance?
Absolutely.
Presumably?
Yeah.
We'll have a letter sent out again.
Good.
To just confirm that.
Not a problem.
So the chair would entertain a motion to further continue this public hearing to Wednesday, October 17th. Motion?
So moved.
Motion is made by Mr. Doan,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carroll. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. So we will postpone this hearing. It'll be reopened, continued until October 17th for clarification. And to those in the audience, anybody that wishes to see the plans, you can always go to the building department and ask to see copies of the plans on file. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda, I'd like to open the public hearing for HH 2018-13. It's a notice of intent which has been received for 646 Depot Street, map 55, parcel M2-0 in the R-L zone. The application proposes to add a front porch with second-story deck above and add two second-story dormers on the north section of the house. The application is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40C, Section 6, and the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2. Craig Whitcomb is the owner applicant.
Good evening. I am Jean Bowden, and I work for Capizzi Home Improvement, and we are going to be remodeling and restoring this older home, which was built in 1800. I think I did some research, which was fun, at the Registry of Deeds, and looked at some old deeds. It was built in 1800 by the Ryder family, and I love the handwritten deeds. And it's quite a bit off the road, but the reason I'm here is because of the age of the house, and it's on your list of historic properties. And the previous owners, obviously, from the pictures and from what I've been told, the house is in disrepair, and it really needs to be fixed up. And the Craig Whitcomb is, along with Capizzi Home Improvement, is going to be remodeling. We're not quite sure which parts of the house are the original and which they were added, but for instance, the little deck that we're removing is just some platform deck that someone probably put on, in the last 10 or 15 years. But in our plans, we tried to show also the pictures of what it looks like now, and then a rendering of what it is going to look like in the elevations. And I don't think, the only historic material we're really removing is to the areas that we have to connect the new dormers to and the deck. And plus, the whole thing will be completely done over. We're going to have, asphalt landmark architectural shingles. They are going to use AZAC trim, and it's going to be painted white. And the most of it is going to be cedar. The shingles will be cedar, and the decking is is going to be made out of cedar, and the railings will be the composite AZAC, which looks really kind of nice. I don't know, did you take a ride in there, or it's kind of
yet.
way off the beaten path?
It is.
I can't see it. I think you could, from, above, an aerial view, but whatever it is, it's going to look better than where it does now. I think it's nice that, someone is going to be restoring this house, because, I don't know, I don't think I could bear to look at it until they start fixing it and go down. So
Had it been abandoned for a while?
I think it was a foreclosure, I believe. And I think Mr. Whitcomb's family owns the house in front. It has kind of an unusual, you get into it by going, but then there's another way in the back.
Right.
So, I thought I turned that off. I did. Oh, my goodness. Oh, God. I'm sorry. I thought those phones, it says mute. It didn't mute. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's the first time I've ever made that boo-boo. I'll turn it off completely.
So what had been started? Had they started to strip the roof, it looks like?
Well, I think the previous owners started to do that. Something happened there. Or maybe, I really don't know. It looks like from the picture, the inside is really, there's trash in there. I think he might have tried to do something. I don't know if the roof has been stripped. I don't think so. But whatever it is, we're using the...
It's a reflection of the photo.
Yeah, I don't think it has. I don't think he's done anything. I think it's just the picture. No, that roof is just so old, it looks like. I think nature has stripped it,
Understood.
like the bad winter that we had.
So do you have a list of what you're actually demolishing?
Well, it's really hard because we're connecting, so it's not really demolished, it's just opening up to make it, to fit it in. We're not really demolishing anything. The only thing we are demolishing is this kind of a platform deck thing in the front.
Yeah.
But we're really not, I think it's the reason we, probably have to remove, to do that upper,
You could just move the microphone so that
oh,
you're-
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I
Just
like
get
your little
feedback.
flat microphones, I've never seen one before.
Thank you. So under our, the reason for the question is under
Sure.
our demolition delay bylaw, it
Sure.
is any partial demolition. So that even includes an interior, if you're cutting an
Right,
interior
and
wall.
that's why I came here.
So like for like, certainly is,
Yeah, so if we're
isn't
putting
required,
on
but
a dormer, we're going to be, opening it up in that little section, but the rest of it is going to be just repaired. And then as far as the, and I could look at the contract, but, I think the front deck, you're going to probably take out these windows to put the porch, and they're not, I don't believe they're the original windows. They look like sort of cheap new windows, you know what I mean? They're not, they didn't have windows like this in 1800. So somebody
The front or back,
did
though?
stuff there before, I don't know.
if you compare the east
Yeah, I can,
Should I?
with the east.
They did have there's a letter to what they're planning on doing. There's a letter.
There's your chimney.
from the
Fred.
owner.
From
Yeah,
Fred,
that was
yeah.
he couldn't be, he
Chimney
sent
is-
that
there's
as
a
a,
chimney on that picture, Bob.
Yeah.
Is it?
trying to find
Because it
the
doesn't show it. Oh, no, that's not a chimney.
material
That's
list.
not chimney, that's the roof.
I
No.
think that's the,
Is the chimney being
I think
removed?
that's the
No.
roof edge.
Because it's not on any of the new plans.
No, I don't see
Excuse
that
me.
in our contract.
I'm the owner. I can probably
my
help
goodness.
clean up some of
Oh,
this, because
hi.
we're getting down a bad path.
I'm sorry. I
Could you
didn't know
just
he was
state your name for
coming.
the record, please?
Greg Whitcomb?
You can come right here if you.
Thank you, Mr. Wickham.
Yeah, sure.
I called
Come on
you,
forward.
but, okay, he'll clear it up. I mean, I did the best I could not
Yeah.
being there.
All right, well, there's a lot of things that need to be clarified here. All we're doing is adding a farmer's porch where the existing deck is, and the deck's only about 15 years old. It's not part of the original structure. And the truth is, there isn't much left of the original structure. Only the north section of the house roof is all that remains from the original structure. The rest of it was reconstructed from 1993 to 2005. okay? But it was not particularly well-finished, and it did not hold up, so it looks older than it really is. The roof that is on the building is the new roof, but not the roof that's going to be there, because we're going to replace the shingles. And we're going to be redoing all the exterior trim. Most of the windows and doors have been replaced now, but the exterior siding, roof, trim is all going to be replaced. That's already been permitted. We're doing that now. But we're here tonight to replace the existing shed dormer, the little dog shed dormer on the north section there. That was added in 1995. Yes, on this picture here, that was put there in 1995. We want to replace that with a dormer that's about twice that size, maybe 3 times that size, because it's going to go higher. But it'll go through the house to the other side. So it's a really small gable dormer. It's pretty insignificant. I think it's about 7 feet wide. It's not a big dormer.
And is that the one that you show as the new dormer on the east elevation too? On,
Yeah, you might
Fourth
have a
page.
picture that, of the proposed plan that'll
Here it
give you
is.
an idea of what it'll look
look
like.
at page 4.
So this is the
Yeah,
east elevation,
yeah.
it's the little dormer.
Okay, so this is what it's being proposed to be, but it goes through the house. It goes, you'll have it on that side and on that side as well. It'll open up the upstairs. It's one of those second stories that the roof goes down to the floor. It's a very, very small room, but by putting that dormer in the house, it will give yourself a little bit of room up into that section of the house. And we've got some nice windows
You're
that we can
keeping the
put in.
chimney.
Chimney is great. Now, the chimney is a Rumsford chimney. It's only about 20 years old.
You're keeping the chimney.
Oh, yeah. Well, the only thing that's being,
It's not on the drawing, that's what I don't.
It's not on the
Oh, no,
drawing,
it's on
that's
the, if you look at the south elevation, I think, oh, you're right. I think he forgot to draw the chimney.
yeah, I didn't. No, the chimney's staying.
I'm sorry. I
No,
will,
we're not doing away
I
with
will
that.
make him put that chimney in the plan. He's got that little
Alright.
program.
It's
So-
it's a wonderful chimney, that's why I.
It is, yeah, well, that too needs a lot of work. We're just about ready to seal it. I'm trying to get some of them, see, the way the trim was done on the house, the water ran down the side of the house and it splashed on the chimney and it was all mold, so I'm getting rid of the mold. We've got to seal the chimney because it was never sealed. Because there's leaching of lime on the interior because it wasn't sealed. It was built with reclaimed brick, but it's very porous brick. It's old brick, so it needs sealing. But that's, that's just part of what we're doing in the renovation. But, we're hopeful that we'll get approval to make these improvements tonight because it really will make it a really nice-looking house and more functional than it is now.
Any questions from members of the board?
I have one.
Please, Bob.
Did you keep most of the frame? I mean, you're saying you're doing the finishing.
The only thing that's going to be removed is a pair of roof rafters, okay, in the center of the north section, and the sheathing that goes over those rafters to put in the gable dormer. So you're talking about an 8-foot wide section of that small section of the house on the roof. That's it. That's the only thing that's being removed.
The reason I'm asking is if you're keeping the frame as you found it.
Yes.
That it gives the proportions of the building a true relationship to what was there before.
Yes.
And you aren't changing those, so I assume that the building has the real proportions that it had 100 years ago.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can see by the drawings that it does that. It's a very small dormer that we're adding, and the farmer's porch it's pretty much typical of any Greek Revival house of its era. I've got 2 properties that adjoin this property, and they both had the original farmer's porch, which was approximately 25 by 8. And that's pretty much what this one's gonna be, about
This is a
25 by
house
8.
rescue, not a dog rescue.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what he
I
did.
have to tell you, I think I'm very happy with it. I was a little suspicious when I couldn't find the chimney, but
Yeah, well, the chimney is not going anywhere, believe me.
It's just
It's a
left-
pretty big chimney.
You know, just in the pic. I will have to talk to Joe, because it's in the, yeah, sorry about that.
Now, this picture here, this window, that was the only one that I was going to attempt to save, because that window actually is 2006. But because the trim was on this roof here, it was not extended out from the house. There was no soffit underneath it, so the water ran down and it rotted the whole window. So I just discovered this about 2 weeks ago, because we started removing the shingles on the house, and the window is going to be replaced as well, because it's all rotten. I was hoping I was gonna be able to save it, but it was a wood window. It was an old window, but never used, and they got it, but it didn't survive the last 12 years, so. So we have a window that's gonna replace that. It's not gonna be quite as big as that window.
So
but,
you're, how long have you owned it? I forget.
I've owned it for 2 years now.
Right.
I tried to buy this house 35 years ago, and I have pictures of the original house, quite a few pictures of it. And it was in the type of condition where you would have to agree it needed to be demolished. Although at that time, I was young and foolish and thought I could save anything. But the people that did end up with the house a number of years later, they tore it down. So there isn't really much left of the original building.
But they didn't come for permission.
No, they probably didn't, but this was 30 years
Well, I
ago,
don't-
and
Maybe they didn't
I,
have back
you know, things were a little different then, yeah, yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Joe, nothing. Julie Eldridge?
Nothing for me.
Gail? Jean?
No?
Okay, so Chair would entertain a motion to, actually, is there anybody in the audience that wishes to comment? Okay, hearing none. Chair would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
This motion made by Jean, seconded by Gail, to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. What is the board's pleasure with respect to the notice of intent? Chair would entertain a motion to approve the notice of intent as detailed in the application, noting that the chimney, the chimney will
Jimmy
remain.
must stay.
Joe didn't write Joe the chimney.
Yes, I moved,
Have him running around like.
approve the application with the detail.
I'll second.
This motion's been made by Mr. Doan, seconded by Mrs. Steiner. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Motion carries unanimously. So we will let the building department know and get that paperwork back, so you'll be able to get your demolition permit,
And
okay?
I'll
Thank
get
you very
that
much.
permit. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Easy.
Oh, easy.
Next item on our agenda, we will open the public hearing for HH 2018-15, a notice of intent,
It was in your files.
which has been received for 10 Central Ave, map 6B, parcel L123-0, in the R-R-2 zone. The application proposes the 100% demolition of a single-family dwelling and modern detached garage. The application is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40C, Section 6, and the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation. Article 2, MLDK LLC is the owner applicant.
Good evening.
Evening. Please State your name for the record.
I will. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Ford, legal counsel for the applicant. While the applicant is an LLC, the members of that LLC and therefore the owners of the property are Mark and Linda Bassett. They've acquired the property in the last year or so and look forward to making it a retirement home at this site. As indicated in the application, this is a notice of intent for a complete demolition. 10 Central Ave currently consists of 2 structures. There's a single-family home, wood frame structure, about 1.5 stories. The assessor's map show it as being constructed in 1920, which would make it 98 years old, and as a result, not subject to your jurisdiction. However, I did find in the Macris that Macris has it listed at 1915, which would make it 103 years old and subject to your jurisdiction. The Macris figures, however, are with the caveat that they are an estimate only, and you should look to local records to try and determine the age of the structure. So the first issue you probably have in front of you is whether or not this is under your jurisdiction, whether or not it is 100 years old, and I'll let you have a discussion with respect to that. But if I may, assuming that you have jurisdiction, I'd like to go through the full presentation. The building, as you can see by the pictures, is a shell. It's never been finished, as we would know. The walls are open. There's no insulation, and was used for many years as a summer house. As I did the research for this project, I did read the applications for this area of town to become a National Register district, and the history of the spiritual campground that was operated there between 1886 and 1910. And I did notice that the authors of that particular application made it quite clear that the structures that were built as part of that initial campground and that initial historical neighborhood, if you will, were all constructed by 1910. And even if you are to find that you're going to take jurisdiction of this because of the Macris estimate of 1915, I'd suggest to you respectfully that this structure really doesn't come out of the same historical context, if you will, of the other structures that constituted the old spiritual campground, and frankly doesn't have the relationship that those did and part of that history. So that's one thing I'd offer in terms of its history. The the outbuilding on the site, I couldn't find any records of its history. It doesn't appear on the assessor's records. In going inside it, it was very difficult to tell. It's in such a terrible state of deterioration. And so I added it, frankly, out of an abundance of caution to the notice of intent, not really being able to figure out what it was in terms of age. It doesn't appear to date back. There's no comment on it in the Macris that it existed on this particular site. The owners had, they hired Zebrat and McCarthy as their designers. They had them go through the house. They in turn, after walking through the house with the owners and examining it, brought in Mark McKenzie, who's a structural engineer, who may be familiar to this committee. I attached a copy of his structural report to the application, and you'll see that among other things, his conclusions were that the framing, and again, as I indicated, and you can tell from the pictures, and it may be beneficial to you to actually have a site visit so you could look at this for yourself from the inside. that the framing is of very small construction. It's 2x4s throughout. There are some 2x6s in it. But it's not the type of framing that you would use in either a single-family home today that would meet any sort of code. And so the dilemma that they faced was, even if this was in a condition to try and save it, it would have to be entirely rebuilt in order to meet structural codes in terms of load bearing and so forth. There are a couple of rooms inside, and I tried to show you those with the pictures. And again, this is something that maybe an on-site might be helpful for the committee members, Madam Chair. Insulation was attached to the roof in a couple of areas, just with plastic over it. I'm told there was a floor furnace. That was the extent of the heating system. It is in there today, you can see it. There's a chimney inside, and the bricks are falling off that, and the fireplace inside. Again, unfinished, it just sticks into the wall, there's a picture of it. And yet people did live in here year-round for a while, I'm told, before the house ultimately became available on the market, and my clients ended up buying it. So the building is, I'd suggest respectfully, if it is 100 years old, that it is not really part of what we know as the campground, and as a result, does not appear to be part of the same historical context as the buildings for which there was an effort at one point to try and make this a National Register district. While it's not necessarily the purview of this commission to look at what the replacement structure will be, I did want to, and if you want to see these, I'm happy to share them. I did ask Sebrat McCarthy today to send me over what the plans were. They did. I'm happy to share this with the committee members if you think it's important, just to get it in your record.
Certainly, we'll put it in.
Thank you.
It is the same exact footprint. It is no larger than the structure that is there. The small garage or outbuilding gets removed from the site as well. And I have a copy of the site plan that I can share with you that shows the overlay of this proposed building on the existing structures that are there. Again, because sometimes the committee is interested in these situations where there's a demolition as to what might occur, even though, unlike the first hearing tonight, this is not up for a certificate of appropriateness and therefore being reviewed in terms of its exterior architectural features. I think I have that here somewhere. So you'll see what they are proposing is a modest two-story house to replace this same footprint as the footprint that's there now. So that would be our presentation, Madam Chairman. I think perhaps the initial and threshold question for the committee is the age of the structure, to see whether that triggers jurisdiction under the provision in the Act. Here's the picture that I wanted to show you, just to kind of give you a sense of, it shows you where the garage structure is. That's in red. The existing house in red, both of those are removed, and the new house. The footprint is moved from the footprint of where the structure is now in order to bring the structure more into compliance with the zoning provisions in that area. The new proposed house is more compliant in a number of dimensional aspects under our zoning bylaw.
So I guess I'd just like to start before we go to questions. From my perspective, we have had this issue come before us before, since the new list, or the updated list has come out, where we have had some structures that are now on the list that are 100 years old, but are own records show that they're not. I have a tendency to, in this circumstance myself, to think it likely is a 1920. You don't have any of the deed records by any chance that would have shown anything?
I don't have anything from the record title that I think would be instructive in any way to that.
We do have a property record card that shows 1920 from our assessor's office.
Right.
And, you know, my initial reaction is that we've seen a number that have shown up as 1915 with the updated list. So I would just, I think I'm sensitive to where the house is, but I'm not certain that this actually is 100 years old. I think it's close, but I think they might be in under the wire. So I just want to put that out there for board members. Thanks, Bob. Any questions or comments from board members?
I have none.
Mr. Dolan?
Just curiosity, you said same site footprint, or it's not the same footprint, but the same,
It's the same building coverage, Bob,
including the garage?
including the garage.
That's right.
It's
Because
1,136
it is
square
obviously
feet.
bigger than the existing
Yeah.
main house.
That's right. By the size of the garage.
Right.
Thanks. Mr. Bradley, any questions?
No, they're just putting a gravel space for the cars,
Yes,
and that's the, no other structure in the future?
no other structure. A new septic system, obviously, it's essential in that area.
Gail, any questions?
Well, just to say, my brother painted that garage when he was 6.
He was sick.
He was-
Okay,
Is the paint still
and that
there?
would have been 1940.
It's loaded with lead.
Loaded with lead.
Too funny.
yeah, did he use lead paint? That's the question.
Don't answer.
Yeah. That's okay, that's probably all there was at that point.
Right.
I drove it around, well, I drove by it, and then I walked around it today, and it definitely is in disrepair, as is the yard and everything around it. I wonder,
Yes.
has it sat in
It
such
has,
disrepair for years?
It has sat for at least 4 or 5 years from the recent history, and the family that was in it was able to finally sell it and actually get themselves a year-round house. They had been using it as a year-round house, but they actually were able to take the proceeds of this sale and get themselves a year-round house that really is year-round. So, but as you can see in the pictures, it's just a shell.
Only question would be, is there any forensics that should be taken to clarify the date?
So we have the option of voting it up, voting it down, or doing continuing the public hearing for additional evidence. My gut on this is just because we've seen the 1915 date come up a couple of times. Again, I think it's 98, I mean, it's close. But that being said,
Close doesn't get you jurisdiction under the bylaw.
we've been.
It's not like horseshoes.
I think as a board, we have tried to be consistent, and I personally would like us to continue to be consistent in that respect. However, I understand if board members are not necessarily in agreement with me, that, I'd be happy to entertain a continuance with knowing that we would need to have another special meeting to address it.
I mean, I'm not sure it would be gain to really try to do more, because typically, I think, when it's a vague thing, I would default to the building record.
Any other comments from the board? Any other thoughts? You in agreement with Mr. Doan, or?
Oh, I do. I think that, as you said, we've seen a lot of discrepancy in Macris. And again, it's states itself that it's an estimate, so.
Right.
I mean, I think we would be wise to go by the assessment.
So, we're still in a public hearing, so I just want to ask officially if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to make a comment or ask a question. Hearing none. Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
And I'll second.
Mr. Doan has made the motion. Ms. Carroll has seconded to close the public hearing. That being said, the chair would entertain a motion to remove the property listed at 10 Central Ave from the 100-year list, noting an actual bill date of 1920 instead of 19.
Oh, I'm
Wanna
sorry.
make- Do you want to make the motion?
No, go ahead.
I'll move to make that motion to take it off the MACRIS list and accept the 1920 as the date of.
Okay, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Julie Eldridge is seconded. Mr. Doan made the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries. Unanimous. We will let them know that we did not take jurisdiction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is old. We've done that. This is the latest one.
Okay. I'd like to open the public hearing for the next matter on the agenda, which is HH 2018-16. It's a notice of intent that has been received for 87 Route 28, map 10, parcel W3-0 in the CH-1 and RH-1 zones. The application proposes to remove 2 single windows and replace a third window on the south side of the house with a bay window. The application is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40C, Section 3, and the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Virginia Chamberlain, owner applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening. Could
Good
you
evening.
please state your name and, name for the record, please, for us?
Yes, my name is Mark Grant. I'm the building contractor for this project. Here with me tonight is Ginny Chamberlain, owner of 87 Route 28 in West Harwich.
Welcome back. We've
Yeah, you
we've
saw
seen
me.
you, we saw you
you-
before.
Yes, for the foundation, which is, you can
Exactly,
see, you've seen
exactly.
the progress on it, so.
So, looking at the application,
Yes, the easiest window to talk about is the first one on the front side of the house. When they added what looks like the little teeny, it was an add-on kitchen at the very end, they actually cut another window into the original part of the house so they could let light in under there. So that's what we're asking, to remove that one so that the original structure is back to the way it was originally designed.
Which window is
Right
that?
side elevation, she's referring to the very last, the window that's smaller in height than the existing
Yes,
windows in the
yes,
house.
Yeah, so it's an
Yes.
odd-shaped one, yes.
Yeah, it's out of place.
Yeah,
Or-
that one, yes.
Oh, I see, yes.
okay?
And then the other
Proposing
two,
to just remove that window and put siding back up.
yes.
Yes.
And the other 2 double-hung windows are in that rear portion of the home. We are proposing to remodel that space and make it a kitchen, so we would like to remove those and close them in.
Yeah.
And then we also are proposing to add a bay window to the rear elevation of the house.
Does everybody see the notation on the
Wrote
photograph?
it on the photos, yeah.
So why are you removing that one window that's balanced with the other one?
Because inside, there's only one, the way the house was, that square piece was set up, one of them was a laundry room, the other one was a bathroom. So what we're trying to do is open it up, and
Make it
there's no place for kitchen cabinets. So we're trying to make it the same on both sides. There'll be a door and a window, and then along the back side, it would have the bay window.
So the window next to the door is staying,
Yes.
the far window
Far
is
window is
getting closed in.
getting closed in.
Okay,
So they'll match on both, when you look at both sides of this addition.
okay.
So that whole thing will all be enclosed?
Yes.
Till this angle window on each side?
So, Bob, here,
Yeah.
so this one stays, this one goes.
Right, and there's nothing
Bay
here
window.
either. Would you keep this window?
They're gonna put a bay window in the back.
Yeah, it was on, it's
Oh, I
on one
see.
side,
Oh,
so we're
okay.
They're
gonna,
gonna put a
I
bay
didn't
window in the
understand
back.
that. All right. Okay.
And then, on this side, see how
Yeah,
they got the you're gonna, on the front side, you're gonna put a window, there's the window next to the
Yeah.
door. It's the
Correct.
same thing.
correct.
It's the
And
same.
then we're taking out that, if that's the front of the house.
Yeah.
That's the one with, where they cut in when they added the addition on, that doesn't match.
Nice looking house.
It's gorgeous.
It is, it
Have you
looks,
guys been enjoying seeing
looks
it?
great.
That's gonna- So,
it looks
Had to be
great.
the fastest.
so,
Any questions, any additional questions from the board relative to the application for those partial demolition?
None here.
None?
None, no.
Okay, hearing none. Any questions or comments from the audience? Please.
My
state
name
your
is Duncan Berry, 37 Route 28 West Harwich. I would like to heartily and enthusiastically endorse what Victoria is doing. As a neighbor, I have watched with great admiration and appreciation, and so it's nice to say something publicly on her behalf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sally Urbano, I'm on Riverside Drive, sort of a neighbor too. I want to also applaud you. It's been a great deal of excitement in the neighborhood. Everyone's talking about it, so we're thrilled. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Anyone else? Any other comments, questions from the board? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I so move.
Mary, I just have a question
Yes,
before you do that.
absolutely.
So we would like to replace the existing windows in the house, the rest of them, like for like. You know,
Like for like does not require a demolition permit under our,
I just wanted to confirm that.
absolutely. Like for like does not require the demolition.
So
The
you're
size
okay?
changes If the size changes, if
No.
the size of the door changes,
Yeah,
different story. But if it's like for like,
Don't it still have to be the same, like if it's a 6 over 1 or something?
correct, same
Like
whole
this.
configuration.
Yeah, yeah,
We would
that's what-
propose to do. Existing wood window now, single pane glass, we would be proposing to install a vinyl clad Anderson window, double insulated glass. As far as the wood versus vinyl
you're not.
clad, you don't have a
you're-
problem with that?
You're on you're not in a historic district, so,
Okay,
so you're like for like, way it looks, you should be fine. with the
great,
building
just wanted to
department will say
confirm
the
that.
same. Okay? So, motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
So, Mrs. Steiner,
I'll second.
seconded by Gail Carroll. Any comments or questions? Hearing any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, it's unanimous. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the demolition permit as detailed in the application.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Carroll, seconded by Mrs. Steiner, to approve the demolition permit as detailed in the application. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We'll let the building department know.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looks great.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Open the public hearing for HH 2018-17. It's a notice of intent that has been received for 52 Route 28, map 10, parcel D4-2, in the CH-1 and RM-1 zones. The application proposes the 100% demolition of a single-family dwelling. The application is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40C, Section 6, and the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Sunrise Nominee Trust is the owner applicant. I will state your name for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Attorney William Kroll from Harwich Port, and I have seated with me Chad Brubaker from Lascotti Development, which is a company related to the proposed purchaser of the property. It's currently under contract for sale. This is probably the flip side of the previous petition in terms of everyone's eagerness about it. I'm aware of my esteemed friend, Mr. Berry, in the audience, and Ms. Urbano, and a couple of other West Harwich luminaries who are here waiting, I'm sure, eagerly for the opportunity to speak concerning this matter. So if you'd hear me out, that would be fine. The petition is to demolish, 100% demolition of the building, residential in nature, at 52 Route 28 in West Harwich. The assessor's records indicate that it was built approximately 1870, as do the Macris records. So we don't have an issue similar to Attorney Ford's here. We're clearly more than 100 years old. This property is, the building is basically of wood construction, asphalt shingles, brick foundation, some vinyl siding, and it's located just to the west of the Baptist Church, the West Harwich Baptist Church. I submitted 15 pictures, interior and exterior, of the property in question for your review. Macris also indicates that it was owned at one time by Captain George Winchell Baker, and we indicated that on the petition. It's also part of the Massachusetts Register of Historical Places. I have a couple of rhetorical remarks to make about Captain Baker and the architecture, and then I'll try to address what I think is the more pivotal issue in the case. So no disrespect to Captain Baker intended, but just rhetorically, is every house that was owned by a sea captain in Harwich or occupied by a sea captain in Harwich, is it like George Washington slept here, so we can't do anything to any house that was ever occupied or owned by a sea captain? Again, no disrespect intended. My one acting performance was for Pilgrim Church 2 years ago, and I was a sea captain in that play for the history of the church, after which we got a standing ovation. But in any event, the style of construction, Macris indicates, was Italianate, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm not sure. They say it is. I don't know. Probably Mr. Bradley knows, former architect. But in the newspaper article, which I'll get to in a minute, it indicates that Italianate was a common, it quotes a book about this, that was a common building form in the late 1800s. And the important word to me being common, so it's not necessarily unique to this particular structure, but it's was a common building form during that period. So I'm not here to argue that vociferously or energetically that we don't have historical significance, or that we're not of a particular historical design. I will say that we are not, even though there has been movement for a historic district for the Captain's Row, so to speak, it's my understanding that has not been established yet, so you can't look at it in that manner. Now, I will compare this to Ms. Chamberlain's house, who was just before you. Just for the record, I was her lawyer with the Board of Appeals and obtained the necessary permission from the Board of Appeals to renovate that house. And she's done a great job, and her builder has done a great job, and with the grading and so forth, to restore that house, which was livable before we filed that petition. She was living there, and it was in livable condition. You've seen from the 15 pictures that this is not livable, the property in question. We also submitted with the petition the engineer's report by Trinity Engineering, and this is the pivotal part, in my opinion, as far as this petition is concerned. The engineer, David O'Neill, recounts all of the deterioration, animal infestation, and vandalism that has taken place over the years for this house, rotting, all kinds of obsolescence that has taken place. And this property was owned, this property and the vacant lot next door was owned by the Baptist Church. And I think, with all due respect, it was on their watch that this went down, on the church's watch that this went down, to the point where it is today. But the important part of his report is the last paragraph. And I'll just read it to everybody for the record. It says, based upon my visual, this is a structural engineer, David O'Neill, who's the principal of Trinity Engineering Group from Wakefield, Rhode Island. And he says, based upon my visual observations of the building and given the age, occupancy status, and associated structural issues from exposure to the weather and vandalism, it is my engineering opinion that the building is structurally unsound, presents a life safety issue, and needs to be demolished. Doesn't say should, he says it needs to be demolished. It is not economically feasible to make the repairs that would be required to make the building occupiable. I think he makes 4 or 5 very, very salient points. I do also have, for the board's review, there was a meeting of department heads back in later August with Mr. Liscotti and the town planner was present, as I understand it. I was not there, but as Mr. Liscotti recounted to me, the town planner was there, the health agent was there, the building inspector was there, the fire department representative was there, and I have a email from Fire Chief Norman Clark and Deputy Chief David LeBlanc from the clerk Roy Eldridge of the fire department, and I'll give you a copy. It says, Chief Clark and Deputy LeBlanc agree with the demolition of this unsafe structure. Attached is correspondence sent to the owner in April 2017 noting the hazardous condition of the building. And that letter from Deputy Chief LeBlanc to my client, the current owner, Sunrise Nominee Trust, said that an inspector from the fire department has checked and found an unlocked door and a hole in the floor. The property has been marked to alert firefighters to unexpected or unreasonable hazards that may be encountered during a response. This marking is to remain in place until repairs have been made and the building is inspected. So I wanted you folks to have a copy of that email correspondence from our fire chief and the deputy chief. Thank you. So, as I mentioned, I'm aware of the significance of Captain's Row, so to speak, and the cultural and historic aspects of that. I'm aware of Mr. Galvin's half-page article in the Chronicle last week. And with our technology now, as of 12 hours ago, it's on Google. If you Google it, you will find this article. It says, came on, this was at like 2 this afternoon, noontime, came on 8 hours ago. Don't know how it got there, but anyway, technology is amazing, isn't it? So, what to do? My argument is that, and I'm sure that the board's going to hear from the luminaries from West Harwich, okay? And I'm not discounting anything that they have to say or might want to say. What I will say is that even if this building is historically significant in the board's view, or had some noteworthy person like Captain Baker, as a former owner, it is beyond economic feasibility for repair. The delay, if you impose the 1-year demolition delay, you're just delaying the inevitable. We have to draw the line somewhere as to where you cannot restore these buildings anymore, and this would be one of them, in my opinion. That it's beyond that, and it's just not economically feasible. It's not just my opinion. You've got the structural engineer saying the same thing. You've got the fire chief and the deputy chief putting in writing that they agree with the demolition of this unsafe structure. We would ask that the board not impose the 1-year demolition delay so that we can go forward with demolishing it. If the board sees fit to impose it, we understand that. We would accept that, not willingly, but we would accept it, but we would willingly, during the year, be open to suggestions as to what could or could not be done with the property. We don't think that they're economically feasible. I don't think the building could be moved. And my experience has been that generally these things don't work out. So we would prefer, if the board is going to is not going to find in our favor, that the board take a vote this evening and impose the 1-year demolition delay so that we can get the clock ticking on that. Thank you.
Understood. Before we get started, a couple of comment from me. Thank you for the letter from the chief. Just so that the people in the audience and the board members understand, the mark is the big red X that's on the front of the building.
Yes.
And what that means is that if there's a fire, the fire department does not go in because they will, the floors aren't structurally sound to hold any additional weight. So just so that everybody understands that that's what that means. How long has your client owned the building?
8 years. Let me, I have a copy of the deed attached to the petition. Yes.
It's 8 years.
September 9, 2010, 8 years.
Okay. Any questions from the board on the demolition? Mr. Doan?
Just a comment that, you know, the building is, I think the building is repairable. I mean, it's not fallen in totally. And it is a very significant structure architecturally and very in keeping with the area. And certainly if the property has been owned for 8 years, it could have been sealed up and further destruction could have been ignored. I mean, this is demolition by neglect, clearly.
Mr. Bradley, any comment?
Oh, I agree exactly with that. This is neglectful, and we shouldn't condone this kind of thing. I'd like to know why the fire department didn't require that the building be enclosed. But, that building, I remember way back, about 15 years ago, that the building came up for demolition, I think, at the time, and it was in fairly good shape. The building was enclosed. There weren't any broken windows. I've been by it the last 2 weeks. And I was pretty appalled at what had happened to it. It looks like it's almost deliberately being torn down piece by piece. That's all. It's just a comment.
Mrs. Carroll, any questions, comments?
Well, I agree with my colleagues that in the past 8 years, something could have been done to prevent what is described as, you know, hazardous, unsafe break-ins and so forth. It's just been 8 years of come and get it, and it's a shame. And I just wanted to comment on one thing that was said about the architecture, that it was common. Well, that was then. It was a common architectural style. It's not common now. It's fairly uncommon. And there have been so many losses of this common architectural style that it's a shame to say it's not an important building, because there are fewer and fewer of them. And that's all I have to say.
Mrs. Steiner?
Well, my thoughts echo what everyone has said before. I think in 8 years, something could have been done to salvage this building, and it's a shame because it's on a very visible corner. And from a streetscape perspective, it's part of a network of buildings that are all kind of hanging together. We have a group working on historic districting for that area, and I just think it's a shame to lose a building that is so indicative of a period of time that's important to the history of Harwich.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure. Mr. Bradley?
I'd just like to echo what Jean just said, and I actually forgot it. In terms of the Captain's Row applications and so forth, I think this is a rather important building. It does define the corner, and it connects from one side of the church to the other side of the church. It connects the residential rhythm. If we lose this, you're not going. It's just another further spread out where there is no connection visually, and I think that's very important to the possibility of having an historic district there.
Okay,
And by the way, the Italian design is fairly rare and
any other comments from the board?
Can we just piggyback on Bob?
Okay.
And I just had one on the letter from the engineer. I thought it was interesting what he said in that last paragraph. Let me find it now. He said, after we went through his whole thing, it's not economically feasible to make the repairs that would be required to make the building occupiable. But I wonder if, I mean, that's a standard statement, perhaps? I mean, yes, there would be a ton of repairs needed in this house. You probably have to gut the whole thing. But the shape of the house and the facade that it presents to the town, I think, is important.
Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public?
there we go.
Good evening. My name is Duncan Berry. I'm one of the aforementioned luminaries from West Harwich, 37 Main Street. Nice to see my friend here. Although I hate to oppose Bill on anything, far be it from me to disagree, but I do want to perhaps put a different spin on this and speaking as a resident who has been involved with this Captain's Row initiative, as slow as it's gone because it's essentially a ground-up thing, one of the things that we've done is to go door to door and connect with all of our residents and neighbors, which has been a healthy thing in and of itself. And it made me think of what we were talking about earlier this evening, the compliance issue. Does your historic district in the center here, in a certificate of compliance involves whether or not it conforms to the standards that you have for the neighborhood. And we're trying to establish those norms. And we do it actually by personally connecting with the people that are in our town. And 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and 3 years ago, 3 members of our little neighborhood have tried to reach the folks that own that building to connect about our concern as neighbors with the status of the house. So we are concerned about it, and we've never heard back by phone or by email. So I think we have concerns about the potential disposition of the house, because once you get to a demolition situation, then conformity is going to be according to what? According to nothing being there. And you can't conform to something that doesn't exist anymore. So we're getting rid of a standard, and that's probably the big problem that I have. And while it's true that you may perhaps make the statement that the Italianate style, which has been called common, this is an exceptional example of the Italianate style. I invite you to go take a look at the woodworking, the exceptional detailing of the moldings, the bracketing that supports the large, generous, kind of wonderful eaves are elaborately carved with crockets and all sorts of incredible workmanship. That's the kind of thing that we cherish, and when we have people that come through the district, we share that. That's part of our awareness of what we all have. And once you get rid of that, you get rid of all of that. And it won't be replaced. And that's, I think, probably where we're going with it. We have connected with, let's say, prior owners who wanted to demolish on 28. And we have, in fact, brought 3 buyers to a recent scenario that was similar to this, who were willing to pay full price, list price, as asked. And I don't hesitate to believe that we can do that again, find the resources to save this property. I encourage the board to seriously consider the idea of a delay, only for the sake of preserving this piece of the historic fabric. There's been no talk about replacement. There's been no talk about, when we get to a situation of conformity, what's going to happen afterwards. So it's distressing to not have a neighbor to communicate with about a dilapidated structure. It concerns us all. It's like a wound in the body of our little town, our little village, and we all feel like, I go by it. I mean, how many people don't go by that on your way into Dennis? I mean, it's a sore. And the other eyesore, I should tell you, I was just speaking to a person who was on Preservation Mass, who thinks that our schoolhouse and the Bishop's Terrace all deserve to be in the top 3 most endangered buildings in Barnstable County. So I'd love to get that in writing. I'd love to get that committed to you all. But I obviously am a partisan. I live in a house that is older than that. I understand infestation problems. I understand maintenance issue, and I live in it, and I take care of it. We're neighbors. This is what neighbors do. We connect with each other. I want the neighborhood, this whole sense of our community, to be, respected. And so it was in light of that, I think that you should seriously contemplate the delay. As onerous as it is, 8 years have gone by. We would like to at least have as a neighborhood, as a community, as friends, as relatives, many of us are all related to each other, believe it or not, in this little backwater community, but we want to see this preserved. Thank you.
Sally Urbano. I won't say I'm a luminary, but I may soon not have a lawyer. Just kidding. A couple of things, but first of all, it would be important for me to know, are there plans? You're talking about demolition. Are there plans for that lot?
Is she asking through?
If she's asking through me, through to you, if you
Would you
choose
like
to
me to
answer?
respond? Yeah.
If you have an answer.
Very preliminary plans for a retail store. It's in a CH2 district.
Right, so if you know anything about the National Register District, which was chosen very carefully because we wanted to stabilize our neighborhood, but we also wanted to create and foster an environmental place where people could come and be successful in their businesses. But we also wanted to use historic districting because that's a really great way to stabilize a neighborhood. And with the National Register, there's advantages for the homeowners and the historic buildings, but there's no essentially restrictions as there would be in a historic district. And so what we'd really love is to be able to talk with the person that's proposing, putting up something there at some point and see if we might be able to help each other, because we have been working on this for how many years? 5 years. Time has gone on. We've gained quite a bit of knowledge along the way. We have some contacts. We just think maybe that would be one way to go. But I would like to address a few other things that I heard. No, we are not yet a National Register district, but we did pass the very first hurdle, and we have a letter from Mass Historic that says they came out and made a visit, and they said, yes, you can submit. We just have to find the funds and the way to do that, but it will be done. Second, let's see. So the United States did a survey, and they inventoried all the historic buildings across the United States. Only 3% of all those buildings come up and rise to the level of something that needs to be demolished. And I understand with the business and so forth, there are considerations, you want to make a profit, whatever, but it still can be done, and we think we might be able to help with that. Also, in regards to our neighbors who held that property for so long, we also are in contact with the minister of the Baptist Church, and as 2 years ago, he was complaining because he wanted to mow the property at 52, and they told him no. They did not want him to mow that property. And as far as vandalism goes, I can tell you exactly when that started to happen, because I go by there all the time on my way to the dump. Plus, 2 years ago, I had proposed that we use our CPC money for the West Harwich schoolhouse, and there were some people who stood up and said, you can't put those windows back in there because there's, they thought there was some vandalism. The vandalism at that time was one window was broken. Since that time, we have seen sort of a, how do I want to say, systematic vandalism that's occurred to that house. And I think that sort of speaks to demolition by neglect, and that's kind of sad. As far as George Washington didn't sleep there, I suppose he didn't. But the newest wave of historic preservation is, our built environment. We don't want to just keep the houses that belong to the famous people. We want to keep everything, including, for instance, down south, you will be able to see now slave houses. Everything that represents our entire history, our entire heritage and culture. We want to revere all of it that we can save. Over in West Harwich, we now have 3 red X's in that area. 52 is one of them, but you can see where this is going. If this continues, what will we have? Trying to read it, it's too small. I guess that's it. I guess our plea is just, we think that something good could come of this, and we would very much like to meet with the trustee or whomever to see what we could come up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Virginia Doyle from West Harwich. I guess I'm a luminary now. I didn't know that before I came tonight, but 15 minutes of fame. I really admire Duncan and Sally for being as calm as they are. I just find myself so upset about the neglect that has gone on with this house for 8 years. I walk by this house every single day, and it is absolutely criminal that anyone would buy a property and let it go downhill the way this property has been allowed to do. I know it takes a lot of money to restore houses, but I just don't understand how an owner of a piece of property that has historic value, or any piece of property, can neglect something the way this house has been neglected. It's absolutely shameful. And I hope that you all will consider what we're saying here about the village of West Harwich and the pride that we take in it and what we want to do here, and help us out a little bit. And I hope we can come to some resolution. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I would like to know if you'll take some...
Excuse me, could you state your name for the record, please?
I'd like to find out if you'll hear from a non-resident first. Will you allow me to speak? My name's James Leonard, former carpenter here in Harwich. I worked on this building. I worked on Brooks Academy. I worked on the old schoolhouse in West Harwich. When I was in town, one of my smaller things I did was historical restorations. The building down there that they call unsafe is one of the strongest buildings, the style-wise, that we see in the town. It's elevated off the ground. There isn't a lot of rot in any of the buildings. The walkthrough that the engineer did on his report was basically just a visual thing. He was paid by the company, or paid by the proponent here, to write up in a thing, and he said, yeah, it doesn't look good, needs to be demolished. I don't think you'll see these type of houses lasting much longer. We start nitpicking on little tiny problems, like the trim is bad, or animals haven't gotten in there, there's feces everywhere. I'm gonna take a second to breathe, because I'm a little nervous, if you don't mind. It's your problem. I'm in awe of this luminary here that's,
Your word.
right. All right.
Take a breath, Jim.
Right. Not being one to tell them what a person should do with their property, I kind of echoed my similar feelings about how the property has been just abandoned over the years. They didn't take the time to secure the building to keep further vandalism going along. They didn't do any of the small repairs that they could have done all along this time to keep it from deteriorating. They didn't even take the time to mow the grass. It is, as the Commissioner Doan said, it is a demolition by neglect. They just waited long enough until a point in time that it was horrible looking, and they put all these big words on it like it's, a public safety hazard, and the fire department won't go into building because there's one hole in the ground, one hole in the floor. I bet if you took a virtual tour of the property, you'd see that it is a sound structure. They built those houses back then with integrity and good old-fashioned craftsmanship. Most of the damage you see in the house is probably from the newer additions that were put on, because it's very tough to vandalize some of the interior structures or the exterior walls of a house of that age. It just doesn't happen that often. And I know it's been changed throughout the years. It was, a sea captain's house at one point in time, and then even at one point in time, I've heard tell that it was a boarding house, somebody's boarding house way back then. But it is a beautiful building. The Italianate design is mostly comes from the corbels. Somebody pointed out about the corbels that are up on the overhangs. You don't see those corbels very much. Most of the corbels you see in town today, they're more of a flat, one-sided pattern. These almost go up to a teardrop. So it is a rare, rare type of building. It's covered up by vinyl siding right now, but is it a magnificent, grand home? And I hope the town, through this commission, just puts a little delay on the project to get just a little bit of sense that you can't do this in Harwich anymore. Because that's what's going to happen to all the buildings. Somebody mentioned the one down the street, the old restaurant there. That's falling apart. Nothing's being done there. I think it's a good building. I think you should save it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with a comment?
May I add 2 footnotes?
Certainly, Ms. Berry.
1 footnote. It was said that the Harwich Exchange building was a dilapidated mess and had to be torn down. Of course, it took 4 times the cost of construction to destroy it. And, you know, that's the obvious tale about that. They have also said the same thing about the West Harwich Schoolhouse. I was there with the engineers walking through about 2 years ago and said it was like a brick bleep house. I mean, that thing would not, you're not going to take that thing down. It's not fall, you know. That's number 1. Number 2 is it's not economically feasible. But, well, that's a statement based on a budgetary scenario in which there's certain, certain economic facts that are taken as givens. There are no givens. It may not be economically feasible for the current owner, and one would wonder why one would purchase a house that you were not able economically to maintain. However, there are other potential owners who would look at this as an opportunity. There are other, we've had 3 purchases, am I right, and 28 in the last, 4 purchases in the last 36 months. So I think it stands to reason that the economic argument is an argument of value, and an engineering firm should not be, the statement of an engineering firm about the economic interests of an owner are not necessarily germane to what we're talking about. Thanks.
Any other comments?
My name is Danny Horn. I live on Smith Street, just down the street from the church and the house in question. I just want to echo, I agree with what others have said about the time frame, the 8 years. I'm a former member of the church and still a friend of the church. If they are guilty, they're guilty of selling the property and believing that the people who were going, the party that bought it was going to do something with it. Unfortunately, within the last 2 years, when you really see it's just gone down, down, down. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sally?
I just want to put the icing on the cake. I want, in terms of economic development, remember we walked Route 28 with MassDOT, and we helped, we're trying, still helping, to try and guide MassDOT into creating sort of a street that enhances the Captain's Row area. And so when we did this, and the design review is coming out, 25% design review should be coming up soon. They want to highlight within the road. They want to make a brick circle with spoke sidewalks coming out right there at that intersection of Bell's Neck off of 28, which is right where 52 is, on that corner. Correct? Okay, that's it.
Any further comments or questions from the public? Hearing none. Any further comments or questions from the board? Is there any additional information that the board wishes or needs before you feel you are, or do you feel you're ready to make a decision tonight? Are we ready to make a decision tonight?
Madam Chairman, may I have,
Yes.
not in terms of rebuttal, just a reminder that, first of all, I will pass on to my client what was said this evening.
Thank you.
We have a representative of the purchaser here who's taken extensive notes. And I'll just remind the board that I stated that if the board imposes the one-year demolition delay tonight, that part of the function of the delay is to allow discussion to take place, possible alternatives, things of that nature. So I will pass that along to the owner. The buyer's representative is here also, and I stated earlier that they'd be willing to listen, the proposed purchaser would be willing to listen to that.
Would you be able to pass along some contact information from some of your luminaries that had said they'd like to be in touch? I would just propose that may be something you'd want to do. Mr. Berry had indicated.
Oh, I know
that he
how
had-
to get in touch with Mr. Berry and Mr. Urbano.
I assumed you did.
Mr. Leonard, I'm not so sure about, but I know where he is now. Sorry, Jim. It's been a while. And it's late and I haven't eaten, but it's Leonard, sorry. Leonard, Jim Leonard.
So are we ready to close the public hearing then? Or is this board looking for additional information before taking a vote?
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
So motion is made and seconded by Mr. Doan and Mr. Bradley to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Public hearing is closed. So, that being said, the chair is willing to entertain a motion on the matter before us. Our options are to vote to allow the demolition or vote to impose a 12-month demolition delay on the matter.
You want- oh. I move that we impose a one-year demolition delay on HH 2018-17 notice of intent at 52 Route 28 in Harwich, West Harwich.
So we have a motion to impose a 12-month demolition delay on 52 Route 28, which is matter 2018-18.
Dash 17.
17.
17, thank you. So the demo delay will be voted this evening. Voting, is there a second first to that
Second.
motion? Seconded by Mrs. Carroll. A vote in favor will impose the 12-month demolition delay. So is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the demolition delay?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Get the paperwork and start the clock ticking in the hopes that the owner and perhaps some of the neighborhood proponents might have some fruitful discussions.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I would like to open next. Folks, we still have a meeting. If you could take your. Mr. Barry?
Yes.
I'm sorry, we still have matters on the agenda. Would you mind taking the conversations outside? Thank you. The next matter on the agenda is HH 2018-18, notice of intent which has been received for 611 Route 28, map 14, parcel Z6 in the C-V zone. The application proposes a partial replacement of the foundation The addition of dormers on the dwelling and detached garage, a 9-foot by 4-foot rear addition, extension to the existing front porch, replacement of 3 windows with doors, and renovation to the exterior trim, siding, and roofing. The application is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40C, Section 6, and the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Joseph Young, prospective owner applicant.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to give each of you a new A3 document, as one of the doors did get moved instead.
You were before us on the porch prior, correct?
Correct, yes. So, and the foundation as well.
Right.
The town.
You could
I don't wanna
just state
say
your
the
name for the
town.
record.
Yep, my name's Joe Young. I'm the owner at 611 Route 28.
Thank you.
So the town denied the permit because they wanted us to get a special permit because of the zoning non-conforming, or pre-existing non-conforming. And it was just taking too long. So we just now are putting a foundation only under the main part of the house. Because apparently I don't have to deal with setbacks there, so they're allowing me to go into that. So that's where we're at with that. We still do have to take the porch off to be able to do all the foundation work around that area. So I just wanted to bring that up because I know you guys agreed to the last one. So hopefully there's not an issue with that part. And they already did give me that permit, so hopefully everyone's okay with that. So what we are looking to do here, and when we were at that meeting, I was telling you all the work that we were planning on doing, putting the dormer and stuff. We wanted to extend the front porch to wrap around to the side, just to give it a better feel with the front porch, going with the house and everything like that. So we're looking to, if you're looking at A3 right now, the existing used to have a side door over there. If you look past the proposed porch, the existing used to have a single side door, because this used to be a 3-person or 3-family housing, 3 separate apartments. So we're turning this into a single family right now. And we're gonna be putting in a French door because there's a little patio that connects the garage to that house. So we're looking to put a French door right there because that's gonna be off the master suite, one of the master suites. So then if you looked at the existing, we had a door in the existing porch that was on the right. We're moving that door to the left now. We are not replacing any of the siding. We actually found that most of the siding was good underneath the vinyl siding, which is great. There's probably going to be some areas that we are going to have to just replace, but we're looking to keep most of the trim. If not, we're going to match the trim, keep it all historic. We're going to be putting some corbels and stuff up, going up the rakes to bring that history back to it. And then as far as the dormers, so we're looking to put a dormer above the garage just to dress it up. The garage is just brutal just looking at it right now. So we just want to add some windows there and just dressing that up a little. And then above the front porch, we're looking to put a second master suite up there. That's where the dormers are. However, we do have to raise that up 2 feet because right now the existing head space is 8 feet at the ridge. So we have to bring that up to be able to walk into this on the sides and everything. It doesn't really play too much into it. Obviously, the detail's all going to stay the same. It's just getting moved up a little on it. But we do have to basically take that part off and go up 2 feet on that wall. And then we're looking to add a couple skylights. If you look at A4 to the 3rd floor. I'm sorry, it's on A3. I apologize. Most of it's on A3. So you see the 2 skylights that are on the back. We're looking to put them there just because there's a 3rd floor on this that's unfinished, and we'd like to finish it off so you can have some privacy away from the kids and hopefully see Witchmere Harbor from there. So we are going to be putting new garage doors on. Basically like Craftsman style to come, or carriage style, I'm sorry, not Craftsman, carriage. And then on the rear of the house, no, I'm sorry, the side of the house, if you look at A4, we will be putting a French door off of that to get out to the yard. And then if you look at the top of that on the south elevation, we are looking to do a 4-foot bump out. The reason we have to do that bump out is to be able to access that master bedroom that we're looking to add. And once you get up the stairs, you literally only have 3 feet, not even 3 feet, to turn into the door. And the door right there now is actually off of the stairs, about 6 inches. So I need to move that door so it's not a hazard or anything like that. So the only way we could do that is bumping that out.
Okay.
And we're not putting that circle window. The designer just put that there, that circle window. It's gonna be a square window to match the rest of them.
Any questions or comments from members of the board? That's nice. Mr. Doan?
Nope.
Mrs. Eldred? Nothing. Mr. Bradley?
No.
Mrs. Carroll?
I've got nothing.
Mrs. Steiner?
Nothing.
All right. Anyone in the audience that has any questions? Sally, please come forward, state your name for the record. Oh, please.
I'm Paul Vassal, the owner of the property directly across the street at 620. I have been through the house in its current condition, and we're very excited to have these folks doing what they're doing to that place. Really going to improve the neighborhood.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Last call for comments. Chair will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I so move.
Second.
Mrs. Steiner and Mrs. Carroll have moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Any in opposition? Motion carries unanimously to close the public hearing. Then, Chair would entertain a motion on the demolition permit. Chair, hear a motion to approve the demolition permit as per the details in the application.
I will move, excuse me, to approve the demolition of the stated areas at the property at 611 Route 28. And that is HH 2018-18.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Eldridge seconds. Any comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of granting the demolition permit to demolish the stated areas in the application for HH 2018-18 located at 611 Route 28. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We will let the building department know. Thank you very much. Okay. And we have one to go. I'd like to open the public hearing for HH 2018-19, notice of intent, which has been received for 20 Davis Lane, map 8, parcel N2-0 in the R-L zone. The application proposes 100% demolition of a single-family dwelling. The application is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40C, Section 6, and the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Paul Vassal, owner applicant.
Hi,
Welcome.
I'm Paul
You have
Vassal.
a long agenda.
I know, that was interesting. So I really don't have much to say. I've owned and lived at 20 Snow Inn Road for the last 15 years with my family, and then 5 years before that at 25 Bank Street in the old Biggs Inn. So I've been at both ends of Davis Lane and have watched this house and its deterioration in the last 20 years, but I know it's been unoccupied for 30. The family did visit every so often, gentleman Mike Miller to mow the lawn. That's how I got to know Mike, and I always told him that, you know, I'd gladly move from 20 Snow Inn Road and go there if they ever wanted to sell. I knew it was, you know, in disrepair, but I'm not going to, you know, kind of belabor that. I've heard a lot of different arguments tonight. This place is, I don't let people go inside because of the mold situation, and the water damage is extensive. And, you know, not sure which part of the house would be historic. I know it's been added on to. The garage is unusable, and the foundation is in disrepair as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions as well. I know the property pretty well.
The application noted that there was an engineer's letter in here, or a letter from Dan Croto, and I didn't see one.
I didn't do, so Dan's not a structural engineer, and I talked to structural engineers, and, you know, they said, from their opinion, knowing the house, that, you know, they're in agreement, but I didn't want to pay the $1,000, to be honest with you. That's why I haven't done it. I wasn't sure whether the board visits the properties or not, but.
So, okay, so that's
And I
just-
think there are
thought
some
that was
really,
missing.
hopefully, really good pictures that came out.
Yeah.
Amy was nice enough to print them out for me.
So we'll start with questions from members of the board. Again, it's a demolition, and Mr. Vassal's proposing 100% demolition of the property. Questions, comments, concerns? Clearly, the pictures are.
I'm just kind of in awe at the pictures.
Well, my brother-in-law took the pictures this summer in his visit from California, and he's a pathologist, and he said, wow, if Hollywood could get this
Oh, yeah.
in a horror movie,
He's
that would
like,
be
awesome,
great, you know?
probably, yeah. Oh.
Just a shame.
It really, I agree.
I just have a question. Is there anything that shows what the house actually looks like? Do you have a picture of the whole house anywhere, or? I couldn't get down the street.
I can
There was
show you a
truck
picture of
parked
the
there
front
when I-
porch with me on it, if you don't mind. And it was taken this summer. If the board would give me just a minute, I will find it here.
Oh, sure. Because just from the area where it is, I mean, you are right on the water, right? Right,
It's
just like rough over
the second row in. From the front row of Davis Lane is waterfront, and then we're on the north side.
I couldn't get down the street to see which side you were on. I guess I was just
That makes
assuming
sense.
that.
All right, I will find this. Okay. There it is. If I may approach the.
Sure.
The front porch goes this way.
Wonderful
so
things, cell phones, right?
I kind of tiptoed up there, and my friend took the
great.
picture this summer.
Fabulous, thank you.
Anybody else? I mean, it's,
It's all right.
I was only up there for a
Yeah, I
couple of
know.
minutes.
So,
Mr.
I mean,
Jones.
I think the original part, I mean, clearly the original part's the south side, the very front building. I didn't go behind, I just did it basically a drive-by. But that original building is an unbelievable building as far as architecturally. That I think it was 1750. It is absolutely spectacular, other than the leaning and
Sure.
stuff like that. I really would hate to see that demolished, to be honest. I suspect, like the other building, that the bones of it are probably pretty good still. And it's just that the interior, and, you know, we have water leakage and the shingles are coming off and things, and it's really, would be a shame to see at least the original part of the house go.
So how would I find that out, though, what the original part is? Is there?
Well, I mean, you can just tell from the architecture. I mean,
Okay.
that is classic, late, 1700s, with the, on the side, 2 big windows and then 2 small windows on the second floor. That is so classic of that period.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't go back in the rear to see, although they're probably well over 100 years old, too. I'm not sure. I didn't go back and see.
I don't know either.
Mr. Bradley, any questions or comments?
I'm disappointed. I really can't. I don't know the house. And I'm loath to go for demolition without really seeing it.
If my phone's gonna allow us, let's see.
I mean, some of the interior pictures.
I've seen a lot worse than this, so I.
You know. Are you the builder?
I do the building, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I don't do it myself physically,
Oh,
but
but
I
you're
have,
the
I have the people that do it.
Just trying to see if we can find a picture of the front of it.
I would sort of like to have a continuum on this until I get more information. Can you get into it?
You can get into it, but I don't know how we like do a waiver or something on that. I don't let anybody in there just because of the condition that it's in and the way the ceilings are coming down. But I mean, I can maybe arrange to meet you folks there.
Yeah, that's what,
Okay.
I'd love to do that.
I would like to do that. I don't mean to drag this on or anything.
No, no problem. Still warm out.
Given the location and the age of the possible age of the property.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm
And there may
just,
be a way of manipulating this thing a little bit, so.
The other thing I would ask, just for education on my part, so it's non-conforming in that the way it goes back in the property. If we were to preserve part of it, can you move it up into the legal building envelope, or is that not allowed?
that's really a question for the building inspector.
But
Okay.
yeah, you could. No, I don't.
Are you saying physically, can you do it? or-
Yeah, I mean,
I think so.
No, I think you mean legally, right, under the zoning? Yeah, so that's a question that the building inspector can answer for you. My phone's gonna die, but there are a couple of side pictures. Phone's gonna die. Very small is the problem, and there's one picture of a facade.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to see the building.
It's incredibly gorgeous.
So if, there are lots of aerial views.
Yeah, I'll do the structural thing now too, that we're gonna continue, so.
So I would say I would need to,
You were in an airplane or something?
no, this was from a listing on Realtor.com. So those are just the pictures that were online for it, just so you know what
Sure,
we
of
just
course.
looked at, and you folks can, I apologize, because my
If I
phone will
built that, I'd
probably
move there in
die.
a heartbeat.
But if you
That's a
scroll
nice
left to
area.
right,
It's a
Very
nice
quiet.
location.
Are there any beach rights to it or anything?
No, but Merkel's right there. Merkel is
right,
great.
just
I mean,
go there.
Merkel is a public beach with no parking, so it's pretty much a neighborhood beach, So, yeah, we can incorporate that in, but let's continue and, we'll come back in October.
Okay, so we will.
And then in the meantime, let's meet over there.
Yeah, I'd love love to.
And also, I'll get the structural person in. I'm just worried because the windows were never closed for like 20 years, so I don't know what that's gonna mean, but, you know.
So if you could get in touch with Amy, the
Amy
historic-
Blanchard?
Amy Banford, yep.
Bamford, yeah.
Yep, and let her know some possible dates and times that you'd be available.
No
And then
problem.
she can communicate with the board and try and set up a date and time. Personally, I would like to see an engineer's report.
No problem.
Just in the record. As a matter of course, we like to have them. And then we will have Amy also just prepare a letter that memorializes that you're agreeing to continue for another month.
Yes.
Just so that our time frame is extended.
No problem.
We will, that's the case, we can postpone to or continue the public hearing until our October 17th meeting, which is the third Wednesday in October.
No problem.
Put you on the agenda. So that being said, I would entertain a motion to continue till the 17th.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Somebody go ahead.
I move to continue HH 208, is it 19? Are we up to 19?
We are up to 19. It was a busy meeting. Okay, Mr. Jones has made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Jones and Mrs. Carroll moved and seconded to continue the public
That's the
hearing
previous
until October 17th, 2018,
Oh, I didn't see
no
the
earlier than
septic
6
system.
PM. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. We will see you on the 17th, and just thank you for your patience tonight as well.
No problem,
If you
no
could
problem.
just
This was a record
communicate with,
meeting.
communicate with Amy for
Okay.
us and get us some dates and times so
Will
that we
do.
can, if, we will likely have to post it as a public meeting if there are more than,
Oh,
if
really?
there's a quorum. So, so just give us a little bit of a head, of a
Sure.
leeway on.
I'll
the
make it
time.
for, next week's the end of the month, so I'll make it for like the week after or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
And last but not least, Sally,
Oh.
Mrs. Urbano is on our agenda to have a discussion on Captain's Row.
A long evening for you guys, so I think we can, I'll get right down to business.
Thank you. It's appreciated tonight.
I was thinking on the way, before talking with you, how Captain's Row had became a work group way back when we were meeting in the Albro House, when the Albro House was still white. So what I wanted to do was just touch base again and see, because we haven't had any interface in a while, and make sure, see where you are all on the Captain's Row initiative. Are you still on board with that? Are we still a work group? And, come up with some ideas, because as you can see, we're facing some difficulties. We've got the 3 X's. Even though I think Duncan said 36 months, we've had 4 historic homes sell, and those people are making repairs or keeping them within the historic footprint. So we've got good things going, but we've got some hurdles. So as to your pleasure, are you still behind us, and what can we do?
Just update, where are you on the historic application? to
The
make it
National
historic?
Register. Okay, so we got the first approval. Jean and Gail were there with us, and we met with Sarah and Phil, who's no longer working at Mass Historic, but we have the letter from Mass Historic, which gave us the approval to proceed. And we've come to the conclusion, slowly but surely, that we are not going to get funds from the town to submit. And so we are in the process of reformulating and figuring out how we're going to do that, but we're going to do that.
And how much is required?
It was, the last estimate I got was from Sarah Korjeff, and it was approximately $14,000 for the approximate, I can't remember, 24 homes.
Sally?
And that was to actually to file the application for a National Historic Register
District.
district
Yes.
for the Captain's Row section.
Yes.
And Sally, did Sarah have any ideas on grants or anything?
I've been calling a lot of people. Sarah said, she said that, and I talked to CPC too, as we went up against, what was it, last year? Some CPCs will allow for it, depending on their interpretation. Ours apparently does not. And I did word it. I could have been worded differently, possibly. But still, chances are they might not have funded it. Mass Historic says that there are planning grants that can be done for this, but it's a matching grant. So they'll give us X amount, but I have to come up with the money from somewhere else. But we have some ideas. We're going to try and figure it out.
I think your application was 2 years ago.
2 years. Time flies.
It does.
What is required on the matching grant? Do you have to have the money matched first, or are you allowed a year to get the matching grant?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know about raising money either. That's out of my realm. I don't know how one would do that. We did do, when we were doing the schoolhouse project that went down by 6 votes, the town worked with us on a matching grant, Dave Spitz at the time. And we were going to get a matching grant. It was $250 that we were going to get from CPC, and then $250 as a matching grant through, I don't know, the municipality, something or other. I don't remember. But anyway.
Do you know, has anybody looked at that matching grant? Like, for instance, the percentage that they award and other ones that have been awarded recently, to see if, because it's a lot of work to do grants.
That's right. That's right. No, and the
You
next.
don't want to waste your time if
Right.
it's unlikely you would get it, but.
And the next grant funding isn't for a while, so yeah.
Have you talked to the town planner recently on any of this, or really haven't since?
I haven't had a one-to-one with Charlene. We've had some back and forth. We put in, I don't know if I told you, we nominated for the schoolhouse for preservation, Massachusetts' most endangered historic resource. And so they're aware of all that. Yeah, I think Charlene probably would be a good place to start.
Okay.
But these are all things, if you want to reestablish, or we can come back in and work with you and you can guide us, because it seems, I was thinking like the Albro House once again. We got that Albro House done through you guys who kept pushing for it, who got the historic colors. Then we got the volunteers. We had the town working with us. That's how that got done.
Right.
That's what we need.
Sally, one other thought. Patty Torek, who's one of the...
Yes, I know.
At Chase, I don't know
Yeah.
if you've worked with her at all, but she was, I think she worked directly with the National Register to get I think she wrote the application for the library to get on the National Register. She might have some ideas in terms of, who you could talk to, or if there were any people that she came in touch with who might have some knowledge of funding.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, I do know her.
What is the status of Bishop's Terrace?
We have tried, it's in a trust, the last I knew, and Bootsy Gregg, I believe, is indisposed, and so her son is handling it. I believe he lives in England. We have sent him numerous emails, as Duncan mentioned earlier. We cannot get a response. It now it had an X on it, and he fixed part of it, and he did a little bit of fixing up on the building. Now it has another X, and now the same thing. You can see the same pattern, as the 52 building on Route 52. 52 Route 28. Now the front door, the aluminum front door, has come off. The windows start to be opened. You see, and that is a treasure. That house is amazing.
You ever see anybody there at all?
No, I try to catch, maybe somebody would be driving by.
They
but
got
no.
a couple boats parked in back or
The
something?
boats, and there's a car parked in the back, and there was some vagrancy there for a while, and
Crazy.
Well, one of the things that I think we have to clarify is that we are still in support of going forward to create the historic district in that part of our town. Captain's Row, the West Harwich, and I can't, how long ago was it that we
Guess it's 5 years.
said, let's do something about it, and we voted at that time to support through a work group the creation of the district.
So, clarification, a historic district or a National Register
Well, we're
district?
talking two different things.
Correct, and that's why I just want to be clear on
Right,
what we're
exactly.
talking
So I
about.
wanted to clarify that we are still supporting going forward with the creation of a historic district in the town. And in conjunction with that, which we didn't vote on before, but came out as a matter of the work group looking further into the different things that can happen and getting information from, I think it was the Mass Historic, because it was when that walkthrough occurred and Mass Historic said they approved.
Yes.
And they encouraged going forward. So that is where the national,
Understood, so
It's
just,
a good stepping stone towards a historic district.
Exactly.
It
Yes.
gives
so
a lot
we've really
more
got
credence
a
to it.
Right.
two-point thing. We just want to
Right.
reassure, I guess, ourselves and the West Harwich group.
so to be clear, to put in a historic district, there is no current zoning change in process
Right.
to affect that. So to do that, it's a zoning change. It
Right.
would require, it'll require
Town
support
meeting.
here, planning board,
It requires a lot.
board of selectmen,
It's a lot.
town
Oh,
meeting.
right, it's big.
It's a lot.
It's big.
So it's a long process.
It is.
So, so I think that warrants further discussion with, from this board, and I think to both planning and to the Board of Selectmen, to get people on board, because it's a lot of work for us to get it started and then have it
True.
die a death before it even gets started.
Right. And that's why the National Register was a bit easier, and we thought it was an easier, less restrictive way, and then maybe we could, move into
And
something.
I think some people have questions too on the National Historic Register District.
Right.
You know, do you work with the property owners on that? Do the property owners sign off on it and say that they want to be part of it? Or,
Yeah,
so
so-
those questions too, I think are all things that,
Right, because it puts restrictions on them too, is the other thing.
and
right?
gives them some benefits too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get
So,
they get quite a
You
few
know, we
benefits.
had voted to, we had a property owner on Ocean Ave, I think,
Right.
that had requested that we supported their application to put their home on it. So we've certainly done things like that. But perhaps we should, calendar this for another meeting.
I think so.
And maybe have you, have the opportunity to try and talk to some staff too, and reach out and see if there's anything if staff has any suggestions. to
In
kind
terms of, we're talking about National Register then, right?
Correct, to
Okay.
maybe
Okay.
help in that respect.
Yeah,
Because,
I can do that.
there's a lot of work on both routes, and,
One at a time.
right, but also don't want to see a lot of work and effort go in again
Right.
to not have anything
Right.
to show for it at the end of the day.
Right.
So,
One quick question I have, so do we have a historic preservation plan formally written in the town? Because I know you're supposed to have one in your local comprehensive plan, correct?
so the planning board has been talking for about a year and a half on working on a comprehensive plan. I believe the last comprehensive plan that was done, I believe, was either 2011 or 2013, and I don't know that it was a full comprehensive plan. So the planning board has, in the last year and a half, talked about trying to get that process started again.
Okay.
But a comprehensive plan or a master plan for a town could easily take a year or two. Minimum of a year, more likely 2 to 3 years, with significant work put in on the town planners and department side.
Well, so would they do the historic plan, or would
So you.
would they
usually there
hire
are
a consultant?
components- Usually there are components that go into a comprehensive plan.
Uh-huh.
Like, we have an affordable housing plan.
Right.
We had an open space and recreation plan. So the open space and recreation plan was recently updated. The affordable housing plan was recently updated in the last year and a half.
Recently, yeah.
So it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. So those are all things that become components of a comprehensive plan.
Right.
But I don't know that.
So this is what I was thinking, so I think
That's
for-
another item that you could check base with.
That's what I'll do. Because I
Really
think-
Charlene and the planning board to see where we're standing with that.
Are you saying talk to the planning board
I
to be
would
put
say
on
talk
the
to
agenda?
Charlene first.
Okay.
And then she can give you a sense, because, as I said, as you know, I'm on the planning board, and
Right.
we had discussed working on a comprehensive plan when
Right.
Ally Sabatino was.
Still with us?
Was still with us, and that was a year ago, so.
Okay.
And there's been talk of starting it and getting it going. I think, I want to say Mr. Brophy and Mr. Atkinson had started some work on it. I don't know how far we've gotten, though.
Okay. My only thought on that, where I was going with this is, I think the affordable housing plan was funded by CPC funds. So I'm trying to figure out if CPC funds could be used for a historic preservation plan.
It may have been, and certainly it may be able to be.
Okay.
But, that would require an application, and deadline is October 1st. So I think we probably would be shooting for funds next year as opposed to this year. I don't know that an application for that would.
All right. Can I, as an individual, do that?
You can try. I mean,
yeah.
certainly can always.
I understand I
submit an
fail a lot, but.
application. You can always submit an application. to
My
CPC.
point of view is at least it gets the idea out there, even if I
The
fail.
October 1st deadline.
Right.
For
Right.
it, so.
Tomorrow night's the CPC informational.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate, and I so appreciate the demolition time that you gave us,
Thank
the
you.
demolition delay.
Happy to have you come. So we'll.
Thank you.
Why don't you reach out to staff, have some conversations with Charlene and others if you can, and then, if not October, maybe November.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sally. Okay, next item on our agenda is really briefings and reports by board members. As we all know, we have Julie is our new member. We still have a vacancy in a full-time member, and we still have vacancies for associate members. I understand the Board of Selectmen are still working on that for us. We do need to, at some point, I didn't calendar it on, didn't agenda it this time. We do need to appoint a member for CPC. I will put that on, I'll make sure that I put it on the next agenda. Applications will be submitted October 1st, and CPC will probably start hearing them mid-November, I would say. We'll start doing twice a month, if not weekly meetings to get things started. So I'll put that on the agenda as well.
And there was an informational meeting on that tomorrow night?
There is, under the Community Preservation Act, the CPC is required to have a public hearing annually as an information gathering event to see what the town members want to see CPC used for and what the general public thinks the needs are. So that's what tomorrow night is. It's a public hearing. So I encourage anybody who would like to attend and speak your piece.
Is that held here?
We need to, it's scheduled for here in this conference room at 6 on Thursday. So, so whatever, if anyone has an opinion, please come and voice it. The CPC spent $3.5 million in funds last year that came from CPC Act funds instead of increasing the town budget. So there will be money available. I'm not sure what the numbers are. We'll find out probably beginning of October.
I'd imagine they're pretty healthy because it's based on property turnover, isn't it?
It is. It
Yeah.
is. It's tax revenue.
Yeah.
So, So, that being said, not much else to update in that regard.
What's the percentage? Do they get 1% on a sale or something? Is
I
that?
believe it's 3%.
Yeah, I think it's pretty,
I thought it was 3.
And then your own taxes is bonus too, don't they?
oh, it's your own, yeah,
So,
yeah, that's right.
3.5 million?
As long as
last
people
year?
pay.
Yeah.
yes, there was a lot
It's
built
the
up.
highest I've ever heard, isn't
There was a lot built up. There was money. And there were a lot of big projects that came forward, so,
Yeah, the housing trust,
the housing trust, there was,
that was a big ticket.
there was a healthy amount spent in all categories last year
Yeah.
that we voted at town meeting, so. I'll be anxious to see what our available revenues are this year.
And see what applications.
I don't
come
know
in,
that
too.
it'll be quite as much, but,
Right.
you know, just because I think we had a couple years built up where a lot hadn't been
Have
spent.
any applications come in for any of it?
To my knowledge, Bob, no, none yet. We met last week and there was no mention of anything having come in yet. Deadline's October 1st, so they'll probably all come in
They
on
all
the
come in
They
one
all
day.
come in
30th,
on the-
right?
Exactly.
So, any other briefings or reports?
No, but I do have a question about this.
Yes.
Is it Amy that I get, she has, my email is incorrect.
Please,
Amy?
feel free to, yep,
Okay,
Amy, or you can leave it with me, either or.
okay.
I can get it to her.
All right.
Mine's wrong too. And yet they get them out to us.
I know.
How's that happen?
Probably have two. They're probably in there twice. Anything else?
Nope.
This was a long meeting this evening, so the chair will entertain a motion to
I move to
adjourn. Motion's been made by Mr. Doan. Is there a second?
I second.
You're all fighting for it.
Second, third.
Third.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Good evening.
Aye.